America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Recording good, Mary? It's all blinking, right?
Blinken.
Roll call.
Nickel?
Here.
Getzner?
Here.
Job? Here. Swag here. Crouchy?
Here.
Deputy Panzik?
Here.
Public comments? There's no one here. So move on to new business, policies and procedures. I want to thank Lori. She has spent tremendous amount of time working on this, updating it. And we'll just kind of go through it and
Is our intention just kind of?
yeah, we'll go basically page by page and like, okay, what do you have? And, you know, if there's questions on it or anything of significance, we can chat about it.
Okay. My first have a comment already.
We're gonna let
Right,
Lori run it.
and I know this is track changes, and so there's a lot of stuff that's like it was typed to maybe retyped, so it's kind of whatever. But I did notice zeros in here. Is that going to be in the final version? I would say.
No. You mean zeros as in,
Like under 1.0 introduction, the first line it says 0.
Here, but here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
oh,
Notice there's zeros. Can that be changed to?
no, that's actually not in my copy.
Oh.
So what happens is with these documents, and I have no idea why this is occurring because we use this all the time at work. What I see is different than what prints.
Okay.
And it's, if you are looking at the shared file, it should be the same, but when you print it, so the numbering, the table of contents numbers, and the final, am I allowed in? Okay. The org chart, those will be updated once we ensure that these are the final wording, everything that you want. Yeah, there will not be zeros.
Okay.
That was a long way to say that.
Sorry.
Yeah, so like if you look at mine, like even this number 1 shouldn't be here. It should be 1, 2,
Yeah, okay.
3. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It will wash out to be the way that it's
Okay.
supposed to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll let you run with it.
Well, my question is, do you want me to call out each of the items, or do you just want, if you have a comment on that page, do you have any?
I've already went through.
I've reviewed the whole thing, so I would say
Okay.
if maybe we go page by page and see, does anybody have any questions on this page?
Yeah,
maybe?
that sounds good. Okay, so any questions? So we'll start on page 4, because that's really kind of the start. Any questions on page 4? Okay, good.
Nothing on page 4. I do have a
Good.
question on page 5.
Okay, page 5, go for it.
So dress code.
Yes.
I like the idea of a dress code. My question is, should we have a dress code, should it reference for the day-to-day employees versus just referencing township elected and appointed officials?
Well, this was just basically dress codes to meetings and whatnot is what we're addressing.
For the scheduled meetings. It's your call.
Okay.
So what do you think?
I guess, is there an expectation of
Yeah.
day-to-day? And if so, I would say possibly we should add something that's, I mean, to me, it should be the same. Are you expecting business casual every day, all the time? So maybe it could either be simplified to say anytime you're in the township hall, or maybe not. That might not be a good way to put it, but I would say there should be something just to prevent any issues in the future. I wouldn't be opposed to that if there was.
Yeah, we could do that. Absolutely. So we could just change
Anybody
this
else have
wording
an issue
to,
with that?
I have no issue with that, no.
okay,
Plus, I
great.
think each administrator is probably expected, right, and express to their employees that are under them what they're looking for, right?
Okay. Okay, so I will update that to just every day and the business meetings.
I mean, you could do it however you think's best to word it. It could be a separate line item, but I know it's gonna say the same thing, but
Office hours, scheduled meetings.
I think we could say that,
office hours, is that what you said?
Yeah,
That's a good way to
Yeah.
word it, yeah.
okay. Noted. I'm noting in the document as we're going, so I will make sure that all the updates get in there. Okay, next up, page 6.
So you changed shall to should. and I felt like it should be shall.
Yes.
So, to me,
I
shall
like
is a
that.
requirement, should is more of a suggestion, so I,
I like that too.
Got it.
It should be shall.
Change to shall.
Yeah. I'm just gonna circle across.
Any other items? All right. Page 7.
I didn't identify this before, but we had at one point felt that we needed to put a time, so we put that 4 PM. I see that's removed from the township clerk shall prepare the agenda on the first Thursday of the month.
We did that because sometimes there are day-to-day items, meetings that Mary is pulled into that she can't get it
I'm not
done
gonna be
right at
tied to
4.
that 4 o'clock.
I'm okay with that, I
Yeah.
just was bringing it up because
Yeah.
I know it was
It
had
was
some
before.
discussion before and I wanted to.
We have a new board.
I was just say, yes, I think we've, I think we realize that it's a good call out, but I also think that the way that this board has handled themselves too, that almost some of these, I think, really can go away because
Yeah,
it's been very fluent.
absolutely.
Okay,
But it certainly is a good point out, Jim, like, to bring that stuff up.
I think it's important to remember too that, I mean, we're doing this at this meeting, but if there's ever an item in this document that changes mid-year, you would just add it to a meeting and we can amend the document. I do feel like these type of documents should be working documents that can be
Right.
adjusted throughout the year,
I agree.
depending on how your workflow changes or your staffing changes. That's a normal thing to have it be updated as needed. So if for some reason you found the 4 o'clock was an issue, we could address it, for sure.
And keep in mind, previously before too, when we spent all this time putting this effort, it only worked for the people that were willing to actually follow it. Remember, we
I
had,
agree.
Yeah.
we required a signature
Yeah.
from everybody. There were a few that would not sign it and would not follow it. I mean, right?
I
But
agree, yeah.
we wanted certain things to be done and they just were flat out not gonna do it, and MTA even stated and said, no, they don't have to do it, they're an elected official, so I think it goes back to, again, to where this board is cohesive and gels, so it's really gonna be about we're trying to put forth what we can to enforce to a degree that's only gonna be enforceable to a certain extent.
Absolutely, and I think it shows the public what your stance is in relation to how you want the operations to run. And
It's a
by,
guide.
yeah, and by following it, it's saying that you value the township in a way,
Right.
so, yes. All right, page 8. So I did add in here the invocation.
Yeah, so I was so page 8 and 9 are kind of related, so, and I think this is an important part to have a lot of discussion on. First, Lori, yeah, thank you. I had requested this previously in the city of Richmond where I work. This is exact language that they use. It's, I want to be clear that last time we tried adding it, the attorney had suggested that we not. Again, Richmond has they added it fairly recently, meaning within the last 15 years, have had no concerns. Shelby Township, they have a pastor come in every meeting. It's nothing specific, and they say a prayer before the meeting. The reason it's important to me, of course, I will say that whether we prove it or not, I say this in my head or something similar before a meeting, because I think it's important to know that we're here for a time and we're here for the right reason. So to me, whether you're believe in God or not, I think everybody in the community wants somebody who has wisdom and courage to do what's right. So that's why I think it's important it's not intended to be a Christian thing. It's not intended, I'm not trying to push something, it's more to remind us,
To remind
it
us.
reminds me,
Yeah.
and I hope the whole board, why we're here. I think that's the reason I think it's important to have. So since I'm the one who had previously requested this
And yeah, this is something I definitely wanted to.
now, I wanted to make sure that we called attention to that item specifically. I have other comments on this order too, but I want to talk about that specifically. Do you guys have any issues with this being in here?
No issue.
No.
I don't have an issue with 2.
Do you want to, so I'm not reading this the whole stealing the time here. Do you wanna talk about the,
I'll just
order
kind of
of
hit,
conduct of the
yeah,
meetings?
so some of the changes that made is in the public comment. So in the public comments in the beginning of the meeting, that's to address issues we're specifically addressing that day, items that are on the agenda. So in the beginning of the meeting, if somebody wants to discuss, if we're talking about what kind of, approval to buy cups, and someone wants to come make a public comment specifically to that, they can. It's not a generalized public comment, it's only to address issues that are on the agenda. And at the end of the meeting, prior to our comments, then it's just generalized public comments. And that's consistent with a lot of communities around.
So I have a very strong opinion on this item, and I will say that since the way it's currently written, the previous chair and yourself we have not attempted to follow the way it's currently written, which is the way it's intended to be written, and it really should be kind of the opposite of what you said. At the beginning, the public comments, at least the way I envisioned it, was intended to be really for non-agenda items.
No.
And then when you have an item up, there's an opportunity, which we haven't done, for the public to comment. So the way it should work in this way is we talk at a board level with no interruption, and the public has a chance to weigh in, and then it comes back to the board for comment. Everybody here, of course, Mary's been on the board longer than I've been attending, but so I haven't seen her sit in the audience, but everybody else here has been in the audience, I'm sure has had frustration or things they wanted to say. And to me, it's very hard to have good comments if you don't know what the board's gonna say. One way or the other. You come in and you see an agenda item and you have to talk at the beginning, you could be either, you're gonna make assumptions of what the board's saying, and you're gonna say something probably, maybe unnecessary. If it's one item that you're really against, and everybody's passionate about, you're gonna have to sit through potentially a packed house saying the same thing, and then it comes to the board, and the board's already has that same opinion, so now you've wasted a lot of time. This is the way I see it. And so, and I've been out there and it's frustrating, because now when something comes up and there's a board discussing, your experience may provide some valuable insight that the board would want to hear, but you don't think of that until you hear the board's comments. So in my opinion, it's for our residents, and for those specifically, those who taken the time to come to the meeting, I think it is much better for them to have the opportunity to speak after we've spoken at board level. And I would personally like to see it remain this way, or again, maybe with that minor language change of non-agenda items only at the beginning, again, to prevent somebody, to make it clear that you're gonna have an opportunity to speak later. But I'd like to see us keep this for now and try to actually utilize that and see how it flows. I feel like
This is right out of MTA's playbook. I went to a meeting and MTA said, in the beginning of the meeting, it's public comments specifically to agenda items. During the meeting, that's our time to run the meeting. If we open it for each issue, it's not gonna have,
It's not their time.
it's not,
well, it is your time because they're residents, you know.
but that's why at the beginning of the meeting, you wanna speak to any agenda item, that's when you say what you said. Doesn't mean I won't
Well, that's like saying-
entertain something, but.
Having an argument at home and saying, tell me what you want before you even know my opinion, and then don't talk to me anymore, I'm gonna do it, like that's not how a real discussion would go,
But this is straight from, I actually
I
posed
know,
the
but it's
question
not
in front of
right.
200 people, and they all like,
Jim, would you be, so if we went back to public comments at the top, if that were to be non-agenda items, at the top, then we go through, approve the minutes, current bills, revenue, go through everything, and then when we get down to, after correspondence, because with unfinished business, we potentially still have, if you were to put public comments in there for agenda items only, that would be at the start of unfinished business, because I know what you're saying, but if we're making a decision on something, like I said, to buy the coffee cups, why would you want it at the end after we already made the decision,
So,
when you wanted it
the way-
before?
I agree.
So
The way
that if
that I'm looking for-
Monica says up there and says, I don't think you should be buying this, you should buy it from Sam's Club, before we actually discuss it with the unfinished business, that way somebody isn't
Yeah,
forgetting about it.
I think they're misunderstanding what I'm saying. So, if we're talking about cups, the public, so what would happen is we talk about, okay, we'd like to buy them from Sam's Club, here's why, blah, blah, blah. Is there any comments from the audience? this is before we take any action. Then they go, you know, you can buy them cheaper if you go to Staples. Then it comes back to the board. Okay, thanks. Now it's back to board level. Hey, that was actually a good comment. I didn't think of that. Maybe we should buy it from Staples, and then we would vote on it. That's kind of how and a lot of this I base because of my experience in the city. This is how the city of Richmond runs it, and they don't get that many audience members, I'll be honest. But when they do, that it's been, in my observations, it's allowed the discussion to stay calm. You know, people tend to get frustrated when they hear the discussion. They're not going to have a chance to speak because we as people really want a chance to talk before it's too late. If you have them talk ahead of time, in my opinion, you say a lot that maybe is unnecessary because we may decide they may be thinking Staples is the way to go. Then we talk up here, and as part of our discussion, somebody here says, "Hey, it's cheaper at Staples." You know,
So
it's
if you
double.
just leave it at public comment, they're gonna ask questions anyway.
Well, if they don't talk at the beginning about agenda items,
No, the beginning is where they,
I know what I mean is if you allow the conversation during the item, if you allow them to talk about an agenda item during the agenda item.
See, that's where we don't really, MC
We've
says you don't
never
wanna
done
do
it,
that.
so you guys don't have
wanna
the
do that.
experience with that.
Yeah.
And if the board doesn't want, that's fine, I'm
Yep.
pleading my
Yeah.
case, but I'm here to
Yeah.
support
You
the
just have to-
group.
And
And
you
I'm
only have to have one public comment period, so we got one in the beginning and then one at the end.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is if you allow it during each agenda item,
Yeah.
and the board talks, then you give them an opportunity to talk. And many times there's no discussion, no comments, then it comes back to the board.
No.
Then, when you do that, you technically, you don't have public comments on agenda items at the beginning, or else you're wasting time again, because they're gonna, let them say their comments at the item so that the board can consider them. Or, again, you risk, it's less efficient, and I'm confident that it's less efficient. However, if the board feels that that's not the way to do it, okay, but it's important to me, I'm really saying my piece, but if you guys don't support that.
And I know exactly where you're coming from, because I've been out there. I would just yell it out anyway.
well, and I
And
guess,
And I think what I just did, and I think that, Chris has been very gracious and let anybody, like, he's let other people
and
talk.
I think
get
that's
I
just, you
don't
still
think
have,
it should be
Shut
the
it off.
exception, because then now what, if you,
Well, I don't think
you're
that.
gonna
but
let
again,
every
this is,
time,
this
then-
is straight out of MTA's book, and I was in a room with
And I don't
100
think
supervisors.
It is the exception.
What I mean is if every meeting, if Marcia, because she's here, I use her, says, can I speak? It's either gotta be all or nothing, in my opinion. You can't let somebody talk once and then a different meeting say, I don't wanna hear your comment, 'cause, you know, whatever, for whatever reason. So I think either, you gotta follow the agenda is what I'm getting at. So however you think's best, it is what it is.
So Richmond must be, and every township is different. I can say that probably here, I would stand up and say that I probably have the most experience going for my customers
Yeah,
for
same
every
here.
township. I have not seen Richmond do where they go, you know, each agenda
Richmond
item.
City?
Richmond City. Most municipalities, if they don't only have, normally they only have one public comment, where I have seen some that have done this, but they've done the top with only non-agenda items at the top, and then when they get down to the bottom, that they would open it up, but it would only be
Prior to the new business.
prior to the new business, so that way it was a little bit fresher, so that you weren't missing out, you know, you could get through all of that stuff, you didn't have to even be here, you could come towards the end. And I think it can go both ways on how you do that. But once you start, I've never seen municipalities do that at planning commission or, board level. When we got planning commission approval, and we go the next week for board level approval, I've never seen where they've given each agenda item breakdown that they've given it.
Well.
And I'm not saying that it's wrong, Jim.
I'll just give you one last example. When we were doing the sewer stuff, when I was in the audience, the board was talking, and they were not understanding what they were reading, and I can't remember if they let me talk or not, but I remember being really frustrated going, I wanna go, they have the opportunity to go up and clarify, no, you're not reading this right, because I read these before and I know, I had some knowledge there, so that was really hard for me that's why I'm here now. because of
That
that
is
whole
exactly,
debacle.
and that's what you do.
Yeah.
You run for
But I
office.
struggled
Yeah.
with that, so that to me
Yeah.
is why I'm so passionate about, if you don't allow the public to say something at the right time, you know, after there's been some, the majority of the board discussion, then you potentially miss opportunity.
Well, just
But-
keep it at public comment, don't
That's fine.
limit it to
Yeah.
agenda items only.
Well, it's,
And that's what it should be.
and that's why a lot of,
Public comment
it's
at the
beginning, it's,
Cause it, you know, in Lennox Township, public comment 3 minutes, public comment 3 minutes at the end. I mean,
The only thing that I can say when I was writing this, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but when I was writing it and talking with Chris and thinking of it as a citizen, because I'm writing it working, but I'm thinking as a citizen, the one thing that it does do is it pushes the citizens to read the agendas, so they come to the meeting
Perfect.
with something
Prepared, yeah.
thoughtful, as opposed to waiting to hear what you have to say and knee-jerk responding, where you might get, they might not have had the time to think through it. But in addition, I think that one of the things, as Chris said, there are a lot of townships that try to have it agenda items only to start, partly for that reason. So they read the agenda, but in addition, let me just say, as a citizen, none of you you're all accessible. So if there was an if there was a meeting and I had an item that I really was passionate about, you all are available. Chris is here every day. I would be coming in the door and having a conversation with Chris before that board meeting
and it happens.
and saying, as a citizen, I want to talk about this. And he's more than willing to say, here's what we came up with. I think what's interesting is the challenges you may have had previously, you wouldn't have now because of the board that you have. That's just as a citizen.
Well, I guess we're assuming that the agenda has enough detail or
Right.
in a proposed
True.
motion, you know, because that doesn't always happen, so now you have maybe nothing to go off of.
That's true.
But, okay.
The other
Well,
one,
it seems-
Jim, I'll throw at you again, just again, throwing it out there to see if it would work. Again, if you did public comments at the beginning of non-agenda items, and then as you get down there, now keep in mind, if we do this where we go through the minutes, the bills, say that there's an
That usually
additional,
goes pretty quick though.
let's say there's 20 minutes additional to that, okay? And if you get down to then 10 to public comments, if you used a good, Marcia, ask a question. If she states something at public comments for an agenda item though, that if we went the opposite way at the top, but we spent 20 minutes going through the agenda, and then we get down there, if we allowed her to speak just before we're ready to go into the business, it's much fresher. With what she just said, making a statement versus if you say it at the very top, sure. If we spend 20 minutes, a half hour going through the rest of the meeting before we get down there, it's very possible that we could have forgotten what was said by, the taxpayer out there. Whereas if we gave them an opportunity just before we rolled in and we start going through those items, would that be a little bit better to give them that interaction?
Well, if anybody's gonna forget, it would be me, because I have a bad memory. However, I think I think it would be more confusing. I prefer, because it seems like I'm the only one who likes this way, so I would say, if we're going to change it back to the way it used to be, I think there should just be public comments at the beginning. I take notes, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing. If somebody
So you're just saying
comments-
generalized public comments beginning
I
and
just
at
think-
the end?
I
Just
think,
public comments.
instead of, Steve was saying, should we separate non-agenda items and then agenda items a little later? I think that might get confusing, maybe you just do public.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, it just popped in my head about making it generalized. If someone wants to come make a public comment about an event, they probably want to say it in the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's a thought too.
Yeah, I think that's
So
why
you
I
could
think
just
it
double
should
it
be
up,
at the
public
beginning.
comment, public
Public
comment.
comment, done.
I mean, you don't have to have two items. You wanna say, you could just put public comment.
Public comments.
I
Yeah.
respect what you're saying and wanting to do, because we've all
I
been
get it,
outside
yeah.
there, outside of Mary. She hasn't been on that other side. But, and there's not, I get it, but I also understand that sometimes people can get really off tangent and get going. We've never really put the clock out there. I've been Chesterfield, I've just been there the last two meetings. And the person next to the chair sits right there with the phone, and you hear it click through the microphone, click. There's the timer, and it's going, and when it's at 3 minutes, looks right at the chair, and the chair's like, oh, I really don't wanna do this, and be like, okay, sorry, your 3 minutes are up, and cuts them off right at the 3 minutes. I've never seen that happen here, so I think that, again, it's back to the gracious of the chair, right? Ultimately, the chair's meeting we were told can literally run the meeting however the chair deems so, even if we put this in place.
That's what happened
Right.
before, yeah.
And
agree.
I think we're
I'll
much
follow.
better, yeah, we've been, well, remember, we were told, I will do it as I
Yeah.
please, this is my meeting, I will never forget that
Yeah,
night,
I remember that too.
you know, so, but I like what you're saying,
So,
So just leave it as public comments.
so
Yeah,
it'll
public
say,
comment.
so it'll be as it's written, right? So it'll
Yeah,
be
we could just
public
remove the
comments.
to address item,
Yeah.
agenda items only, so I
Well-
moved it to public comments and then public comments.
Well, so, wait, I'm confused. You're gonna,
So, right in the beginning, they'll have the
Says
option to
public
give public comments, and then, do you want that?
no, I personally think it should just, you should put, I put public comments and you can either put nothing after that or in parentheses put agenda and non-agenda items or, that might be more confusing.
That,
I could
that
just
also
leave
could,
it
I would just put
public.
public comments.
Public,
Yeah.
yep,
it.
that's what I put,
Public
But I
yep.
would not say, I would not have a second public comments later down.
just public comments.
So just,
Public
that's
So
just
no,
any,
later on.
this would be when I would say public comments, anybody who wished to address
yeah, whether
or
it's
make
on
a
the
general
agenda or
conversation.
not.
Yeah,
And where would you like it at, in the beginning or the end?
Just where it's at
Right.
now.
Keep
After
everything the
the
same,
agenda-
just make it public
After
comments.
the agenda is set, yeah.
Okay.
But
Just
are you
take out-
gonna do that number 10, that public comment at the bottom though?
Do we want? I
Yeah,
don't-
that's the one I was referring
I
to.
would
Do
say,
you
Yeah.
want
do
that
we
in
need to
there?
have that? 'Cause
that's
to
one
me,
that MTA really pushes, and
They
here's
do.
the reason why. If I make a vote, I'm held accountable, because they can come up
Well,
afterwards and say,
They're gonna say, I thought that was stupid. Well, I don't see the value in that
It just-
personally, but if they want it, that's fine too.
That just was-
I
So
they
think
can
it's meant
vent?
For us,
Yeah.
yeah, for them to vent and for us to go,
It's just another
oh, I
comment.
never
period.
thought of that. They
Well,
could
by then
never
it's too
say
late.
that we were not transparent. Well, we could just say, well,
So what if we give them,
Whatever
it's always the good thing to do 3 minutes for public comments, what at the bottom if you give them 1 minute?
Can you,
So
So
that
do you
that
want
way
me
it
to
doesn't
put-
turn
So
into a,
put in parentheses on the
3
top
minutes?
part, put
3
3
minutes.
Yep,
3
and then the bottom, what about 1 minute? Because if you don't like a vote, you should be able to say within
I'd
a
say
minute.
2, because one
Yeah.
just sounds like,
2 minutes.
Okay,
Just-
2
yeah.
minutes.
and then
I
2
was just trying to
minutes.
make it
Just
right
go.
so that we're speeding it up so
Yeah.
that it isn't and I think it's fair to say, a barrage of 3-minute public comments now at the end of
Yeah,
why and how.
yeah.
So 3 minutes and then 2 minutes.
And I'm fine with 2. And obviously, we're gonna look at it and treat it appropriately
Yeah.
per
Right,
case
yeah.
individual, but something so that it's there spelled out. Is that fair?
That's fair. Under where it says consent agendas crossed out and they put reports, that needs to go back to just consent agenda and take reports off there, cause below it is all the consent agenda items.
and which includes department reports, yeah.
Right.
So we will go
6,
back then to,
Consent agenda, we're gonna keep that as consent, well, at least that's what Mary's suggesting, I agree, where you.
you would like, you would like it to stay the way that it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Any reason? Do you wanna talk about it, or do you wanna pass down to anybody else?
Well, it's just, yeah, all those, you can make one motion for everything. The thing is, we can also add something if you want to post something there, if someone has an issue. The chair of the meeting may remove such agenda items from the consent agenda for discussion and consideration and move it under, you could put it under, you could make it number 7, before number 7. You know what I mean? You could pull stuff out.
I thought we had it, I thought we had some
No.
language of that.
the one thing I will ask is, regardless of which way you go on this, is for the fire department budget, the fire department report, because they're 2.5 times our budget. It's a huge, Chief's
So-
gonna hate me for this,
So you
but,
wanna
and he
put-
brings a lot of information
I
up.
wanna piggyback to that. So if you go back and you look at when Chief came up here and explained about the, fire alarms, when he talked about the carbon monoxide detectors, when he talked about the car seats, when he talked about the morale at the fire hall.
Yeah, if he's got special reports or
But,
anything like that.
but what I'm saying, what I'm getting at, Mary, is that when he came up there and he vocalized that, I was taken back, and it's not even something that I would think about, to talk to to the chief. When Jim brings up a good point where he wants to have public comments on here because he was trying to interact, well, we're trying to get interaction to give everybody what we're talking, what we're conveying back to as elected officials to our taxpayers. And really, if you look at this, I realize that there's more emotions that go along behind there, but on the other hand, these meetings last month was 18 minutes long.
So are
The
you
meeting
saying-
prior was, no, I think we should go back to,
Reading every report? or
have her
just the
reading them,
fire
to go
report?
through them, not just the fire report. This is me. Mary had hers where she liked
Yeah.
the consent. I think that it should be open, considering that if it picks up another 20 minutes to a meeting, which I think is probably reasonable, last month would have put us at not even 7:45.
And I agree, I think like when Ken comes to give his report, you giving your planning commission report, I think it's important that the people know what's going on, and a lot of them don't. His PDR committee meeting, I think that if they're coming, they're gracious enough to go to and be part of those committees and part of those boards and planning commissions and such. I think they need, that's their time to say, hey, this is what we're doing. We need your input. There's
The
a lot of
audience was
things.
in gas, or I would say like, I heard them like, you heard that. You heard, out of their mouth in emotion that they vocalized because they had heard what was going on just at the fire department.
And I just think that sometimes if we get just in a hurry, everything just gets rushed.
So what, I get that, I personally no issue with that. I used the example before of reading the senior report, it was kinda like painful
know.
for me. But could our standard practice be, if somebody's here and wants to read it, they would read it, however, if they're not, if
Yeah.
Gary submits a
Yes.
park
Sure.
report, we don't need to read
Yes.
the park
Yes.
report?
I would agree, if
I agree. I
all
do
is
like
good
that.
at the senior center, they did some events,
Yeah.
if you wanna summarize it, I think there's nothing wrong with summarizing it. If there's an issue, right, we're gonna discuss the issue, right? So we would've not necessarily just pulled it, it's already gonna be out, and if it's a good one,
Mention a highlight.
Chris summarizes and highlights it and just goes through it real quick, and that's it. The building one, it goes through really, really quick on there. The ordinance, okay, you might spend 2 minutes on the ordinance, enforcement, going through that. The fire chief is gonna be the biggest one, and the rest of those, Ken's gonna probably have it may seem 5 or 10 minutes, it's probably 2 minutes. When you add those up,
And even
That's
for
where-
Parks and Recs, that's only what, 3
Parks
months out of
and
the
Rec.
year, 4 months out of the year.
They're all
Actually,
online too.
that's what I said,
Yeah.
we're looking 20 minutes, I would
Max.
think,
I bet
at
you it's 10.
max, to add to it, and it puts our meeting now at maybe 7:45, 8 o'clock, even 8:10.
I think
we
it
were
can
taking
still be
before-
done pretty quick. I mean,
Before
the
we were
reports
making
can be
motions to
done in
take
6
and
minutes.
extend, right, when we had those old meetings before.
I don't have a strong position either way, so that's fine. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't just the time, it was the value of the time, like, is anybody getting any out of it? And if, and Roy made the comment about encouraging people to read the agenda, and that's why we should have comments. Maybe that's one benefit of having just public comment at the beginning. And I would say we would also want to encourage people to maybe read the report, so I would, as far as Mary's, I would agree with Mary's comment on the consent agenda for that sake, that they can access and read it. However, if
That's
the majority of the board
That is
wants to read the reports in one form or another, that's fine
What
too.
we were
with
doing
me.
before, if you wanna read it, just
We
pull
can
it out.
pull it.
Just, yeah, or the chief can come up and say, hey,
I do, I
I
like the
think
fire
that
report just because it is,
Well, if
I
we,
agree.
if we wanna,
that's,
so if we
It's
had a
$20.
consent agenda, technically you could
Yeah.
say, Chief, could you read the report still?
Yeah.
If that's what you're saying, or,
Yeah.
but Steve, you're saying you'd prefer that they really gloss over every
Nope.
report?
I think if we go through them, chief does his normal report, goes through everything like he would. Monica, as treasurer, is gonna give us a report, say, you have in front of you your budget. Here it is, everything is balanced out where it's supposed to be at. Does anybody have any questions? If there's no questions, boom, we're done. You got that done in 30 seconds.
So-
But you at least, you expressed it saying, here it is, rather than everybody out there wondering, where are we even at? I haven't heard anything. It's been 6 months that I've been coming. And not saying to come to you, talking to you personally, which they can, but we are here at the meeting to just express some of those things. Again, the senior
Well,
center,
then-
that can be summarized and just,
Yeah.
it's not a very long deal. I
So
think we
the-
forget it, how long that, they never, the only way they got off the rail was because when we got to sewer and water, that's where they got off the rail, because it was always a fight. Code enforcement was a fight, because we were never given accurate information, right? We were always misled because of stuff was hidden, or we got it the night of handing, we're sitting here and we're all wondering why the copy machine's
you go.
going and it's got handed here.
Throw in the garbage.
Again, I just go back to this board saying, it's a completely new board, that if you spend, and we go through it briefly, summarize it,
Just briefly.
a summarization is
So-
totally good.
So the intent of a consent agenda is really not to have any discussion, so I would say it sounds like we should eliminate the consent agenda, and it's really not, then we just have motion to approve the minutes, motion to approve the bills. That's only 4 motions,
Accept
you
and
know,
file reports.
yeah, and then before we file the reports, we have the opportunity to make those comments like you guys are talking about, Chief, can you speak? We don't have to read verbatim, that's what you're saying. That's really what was unnecessary to me, but if you say, yeah, the senior center had 3 events, it seemed like they had a good turnout, if you need a copy of the report,
Yep.
it's here, or you could highlight, oh, they did this, that sounded pretty neat, you know.
Just
maybe-
basically Cliff Notes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cliff
Notes.
If that's the case,
Can I
think
get
that-
clarity? Are you saying that basically the first 3 items are a consent agenda and then the fourth one is a department report?
I'm saying no, that they're
No.
all separate now.
All
Yeah, you have
separate.
to approve the minutes in separate motion, the bills in separate motion.
Okay,
So would we call,
And
so
then-
for formality's sake, would the approval of minutes be item 6, current bills be item 7, or is it still 6A, 6B?
we can make it whatever you would like.
I can't remember what it used to
Let
be.
me go.
That
look
is
at
what
the-
it always has been. The only thing that I changed on here was consent agenda to reports.
Well, since the most recent update, we changed it to consent agenda, so prior to that, I can't remember how.
This one had, hold on, I'll tell you. Page 8.
I know Mary's looking this up, but when we're done, there's kind of 2 sections. There's the recognition to speak under conduct of meetings, and then there's the language, standard agenda language. So if you need to make sure that those match, because they don't match, right?
So previously it just said, version, I don't know, July of 2024.
Yeah, so you have to go prior to that.
But it's not, when they did the version, it would have had the blue line in it and there's nothing here. It literally reads that this
No,
has always been here.
You're getting rid of the track changes count, because I did those, so.
This one has, they're in here.
Yeah, if we met a few times, it's possible it got changed the time before.
It's got the-
It definitely got changed
Okay.
before 2024.
So this one, it said updated 2023, so maybe it was the 2023?
It must have been. 'Cause
Okay.
I know
Mary
I
would
made
have that one.
recommendation and change
Okay.
while I was on the board. So
Got it.
I have a previous version, I'm sure. I do have.
Okay. So you want
Let's see what.
to see
Mary-
what it says. Okay.
Again, I could
What was
easily
the
send
other
it.
thing you said? I'm sorry.
Maybe I was just gonna say, on bottom of page 8,
Yes.
recognition to speak,
Yes.
that says, once the motion is made and seconded, so if you go to the top of page 9, the chair shall open discussion of the matter to the public. So that needs to be updated if we're changing the,
Mhm.
if we're changing that to not open it to the public. So just, and it should very kind of match your standard agenda language that you put on the bottom
Got it.
that says at the beginning of the meeting. So
We're
again,
just gonna give
going
it a
back to a
share.
previous version, which maybe I'm gonna make a note here to send you like a 2000 edition or something.
Yeah, because the only one I had was this one to go off of.
We adopted in 23, but it didn't start.
That's what, because this one was the
That's what here,
24
this-
edition.
yeah, This is what you want, this is how it was laid out before.
Okay.
Use that.
I'll try and send you remember to send you a previous version of this too, because it would say what the language used to be, which it sounds to me like that's what we're gonna go back to. For,
Just making sure, do you guys all want to see that?
The one thing I was kind of hoping for tonight is for B, to see if we could all come to consensus and agree on setting that as part of the, so next meeting we can actually follow that.
okay.
She was looking forward to see
Yeah,
if we
so
could.
this
On the
agree
order
on
of business
B.
under B, if we could adopt that,
Oh,
just so going forward, starting next meeting, we can
Yeah,
follow.
so they
those.
were all numbered, that's what I was getting at.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you
they're
got
all numbered.
bills, approval of minutes.
Or not.
Okay, I'll number it.
They were all numbered instead of like A, B, so.
Got it.
I
Do
mean,
you,
that
since you're
maybe-
right here and it's fresh, do you want to stay right here and?
Yeah, if we can
make
clean
a-
B up, because that's one thing I'd like to start doing it that way,
Okay.
if that's okay.
I mean, that's the way, for what it's worth, Steve said, the chair can run the meetings how they want, and you have been
I want a
running them that
consensus,
way.
though, I really do.
You have been running it
I'm-
that way.
I like us all agreeing.
Do we need to specifically pull that out versus continuing to do what you've been doing until we formally adopt the change? You're saying you want to,
I just want to agree that this is the way we can run the meetings and just start doing it that way.
Then you wanna, after the changes Lori makes, then we wanna adopt section B
Yeah, exactly.
as
the goal.
amended
gotcha.
and effective 4/20. Let's say
What's my second?
Section B and C, right?
section
We'll get
B.
C, there's needs to be some changes still.
Oh,
Yeah, B is just the
B
order
and
we
C.
run
Right,
it,
but
so.
if I update C to this,
Section B and C,
Are we
it was
good?
me, Lori.
Well,
Section
C is
B,
C would be the
Conduct of
order,
meetings.
so like
Yeah.
that you do the call to
the
order.
rec.
Yeah,
I'm
B
sorry.
is just how we run the order in which we run it.
so
Okay,
B, section B, order of business, and section C, conduct of meetings. That's what you're looking for page
Well,
8
those-
and 9, right?
Yep. C is not,
Well, C is conduct of meetings, that's on the next page. Chris
Yeah.
wanted to,
yeah, there's changes need to be made to the recognition to speak, cause it's still the old
Gotcha.
language,
yeah.
which was allowing the public to comment after the board spoke, so that needs to be updated.
Mhm.
Or needs to be
That just-
reverted back to what it previously was, in my
Yes.
opinion. Again, I will email you the previous version so you have it.
I have it highlighted in green, which means change it.
So are we gonna take and do B right now? To formally make a vote to it so that we can move forward or not move forward,
I
or?
would personally rather we vote on that at the next regular meeting and then, I mean, is there
Just
any
a
issue with doing, is there a reason you?
I just wanna start running the meeting that way, so. That's the only reason.
You ran it that way last time, so I would say.
I mean, the whole, like the invocation, how the, public comments.
Gotcha. I just don't like voting on.
Well, we can
some of
also
these
just, like you
things
said, if
for public
the
safety.
chair can run it how we want, but we all have a verbal agreement that we'll follow it this way.
Yeah,
I just don't believe, and I'm just gonna do what I say, so I want,
it seems to me like there was a majority, we're good, I'm good with this way.
okay,
Again, it's not
that's,
how I would have preferred, but the majority, and that's fine, so I'm okay, I'm going to support that.
okay, that's enough, I think. As long as
How
we're
about
on the same page.
I'll make a motion that we adopt for tonight, so we can start right away, so we actually have it as a formal, that I make a motion that we adopt B, order of business, as presented with changes that we discussed.
So, or amend the policy manual section B, order of business.
You did say that.
And I'm willing, I can modify that too.
Yeah, I can. I'll second that.
So we went through and we discussed it, and we're good with where we're at least this way it formalizes it, it's
Mhm.
accurate. I mean, that's what we're here doing, I don't feel that we're not doing anything behind anybody's,
It
we
is public
publicized it, they weren't here, we're spending the time to be here and take the time out of to do it, and we're just ready to hit the ground running.
Mhm.
Nicole,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes.
Geisinger,
Yes.
Mike, yes, Cratchit.
Yes,
okay, now we go to C, right?
Yeah, which can, Lori already highlighted that there's some, it needs to be changed to be consistent.
Yes,
gotcha.
What's
And she has
currently
that
labeled
language?
paragraph 2
Mhm.
needs to match paragraph 4,
yes.
or however that. word that. So it's interesting, the community of residency.
So we added that because there are,
from
so we've been saying that people have to say their address. And finding that that is not what a lot of townships do.
No.
So we figured just saying the community that they're a resident in, because it is a public meeting, they can attend if they choose to. But I think it's important that you know, is it a resident or isn't it a resident? I mean, I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
Are we,
And that was you, Monica.
another thing that I've noticed, and if it's too much clerical, was that a lot of municipalities that I've been going to recently have a sign-in sheet
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
podium, so that it's clear when somebody forgets to say their name, and I've seen up here where they start talking and someone says, excuse me, I need you to sign in, like you're standing, we're not letting you speak until we watch you sign your name, address, even if you're a resident or not, there could be a box right there, check it this way, that way we know that we have
mean,
something,
so-
and I'm not looking to add more clerical work for you, Mary, but I just meant as in,
I just put it in the minutes, I just did that.
So if, you're saying if they wanna speak at the podium, where it's written, we want them to say where they live, but you want them physically to write their name and address, even if they don't have to say their address?
It could be either or, I think.
that's all it was, because
yeah.
most of the time, though, we get majority of people will state their name and their address, and then they'll start to kind of like, I feel like go downhill and veer away from finishing the rest of their address of where that they're at, because they just think that we know who they are, and we probably do. But if we're being held to a certain guideline, I think when you come to the podium to be able to speak, you should also, you know, conform to the rules that we have here. You speak your name, say what your address is. You know, you don't have to get 48005. We're not
saying
getting, but they need to state it. But I think they should write it down as well, because they still say it both ways.
What's the benefit of writing it down, just so we have a record of it?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Even in public hearing, I just put their name, I don't put their address.
But I also think some people don't like to say their address out loud.
I don't think that's necessary.
But like you said,
Yeah,
if
'cause
they
they're
were
coming up here
writing
to
it,
oppose
we
something,
would have
they're
it.
gonna be targeted.
Then we have it.
It's not,
Maybe
Right.
I don't think that's very intimidating.
I can actually agree.
I do like the idea though of the residency, because we had
I
that
like
one, when they did the grow ordinance.
The marijuana.
All
That
these
was the
people
biggest
called in
one,
from out, not a single
Flint or
person from our
whatever.
town, but everybody else was. And I think it's relative for the board when we're making a decision to know, okay, they live like 6 counties away, so it's not relative to Armada. So I think, you know, the residency is important.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
So I have no issues with the way that it's written.
Do you want the sign-in sheets? I think it's not a bad thing.
No, not a bad thing.
Might make it easier for minutes, even if it's just
Not
their
really,
name.
I
Just put
already
that in
write down their
anyway.
name anyways.
Okay.
I could just attach it to the back of the packet.
At the end, that'd be fine.
So, okay, to be clear, we're wanting to we're gonna put a piece of paper up there that requires them to write their name and their residency, not necessarily their address, on that sign-in sheet?
No, put your address.
Necessary.
Yeah, still need your address. You don't think so?
I think Monica's trying to, and I agree with her to some extent, prevent people from feeling intimidated. So if Mary's gonna attach it to the meeting minutes now, then their address would be out there. If they didn't wanna say it, then they're not gonna
Oh.
wanna write it either.
Just a sign-in sheet that they attended.
Just their name.
Just their name.
I think that would be helpful in case we find the need to follow up with somebody. Now you at least could have their name as a
Right.
starting point.
Yeah.
I think it's
Are
a
you
name
good
and
with
then
still
their,
stating if they're a resident or a
yeah,
non-resident?
every resident, yeah.
I think that that's important.
Just
So
a
can we put
checkbox,
that on
name and
there?
checkbox if you're a
The
resident.
box?
Yeah, so do we have
wanna
to
get
put
their-
that in here as a requirement somewhere?
You
If we're
can add
doing
it
that?
in.
Oh, I guess it would be, I've already flipped the page, so, in the conduct of the meetings.
Well, it should be then up at the agenda,
Well, so
Back,
under the
uh,
standard agenda language,
under
we
public
would,
comments.
we would add, oh, right here, it says audience member, where are you, maybe it's already in there. Commenting from the floor shall do so from the podium, asked to provide their name and community of residency. Okay, so, you may, maybe have to amend that to say, and write it down, whatever,
Just did.
thank you.
No problem.
See, I told you I have a bad memory, I forgot that, that's what we started talking about.
All right, anything else on page 9?
On page, so
I'm
did you
sorry.
take out on page 9 at very top, discussion of the matter, the chair shall open discussion.
She's gonna
to the
update
matter.
that.
Yes, I have it,
Because it's
yep,
inconsistent.
I updated that, so I'll make sure we update that to match.
I forget.
All right, page 10, anything on 10?
So the G says, to promote efficient administration, department managers are responsible for day-to-day operations as directed by the supervisor. And then, so you eliminated, some
It was
extreme language.
extremely repetitive, day to day, day to day, day to
Yeah.
day. So it's literally now just department managers are responsible for operations as directed, day-to-day operations as directed by the supervisor, done. Like it's
Okay.
one line.
Then the next line that was eliminated says the supervisor and the board will formulate personnel policies and office procedures, and the supervisor will be responsible for implementation.
And that is the
It's already
purpose
in
of
there.
this policy. So the policy is the policy and procedures. And if it's an appointed official, then the official is responsible for whatever
Okay.
policies they
So
want
it
that
was
person to follow.
Unnecessary language.
Yes,
Now that you
lots.
say it that way, I get that.
Yeah,
I was just wanted to make sure, okay, thank you.
absolutely. All right, page 11. whole lot of changes there. So the only thing I added was that the job description will be provided to the employee upon hire and when updates are made. Looks
Yep,
like an
I
easy
like
one.
that.
Okay. All right, page 12. So the one thing that we are gonna add in is, a new employee, review form. I don't know that we'll use the word appraisal. I don't really like that word for employees. Just an annual review form. And I can share that out. I did not put that in this document.
Okay.
But they each will use it the way they see fit
See
for
fit.
their areas.
Okay.
But consistency with the document. Nothing else really on
Okay.
this page. Page 13.
So the 1560 hours is 30 hours a week, basically. So really, everybody is considered part-time here now, right?
Right, they
Yeah.
previously had everyone listed as full-time, which was kind of odd.
Well, obviously, we would have been part of that. I know we had some long discussion trying to figure that out, so
Right.
that's was a little confusing.
So basically, we just updated this to say that all of the general fund employees, and specific general fund, not including the fire department, because they're very different, their schedule is very different, that they are considered part-time, that they submit their timesheets, and we just called out the fact that they are not offered medical benefits, and they are eligible to receive the life insurance policy that we have, so that you know they are eligible for life insurance policies, and called out the fact that if the township is closed during normal business hours on a holiday, they will have the day off with regular compensation, so it's not
So-
paid as time and a half, it's
So,
just regular
yeah, the
pay.
only thing I thought should be clarified is that pay should be based on their normal hours worked, or if they, so say they only, maybe they don't work Mondays for some reason, then I would say, should they be paid for Monday?
Agreed, we can note that it's based on their normal hours worked,
Okay.
yeah, agreed.
That's the hard part, if it's what we're calling a part-time employee, then it
Mhm.
gets a little
Right.
gray.
The other section is just around, just to note that, we did add a line that for under the deputies, which actually kind of goes into the next page, but it talks about their total hours cannot exceed the amount budgeted, but that an exception can be made with board approval only when there are extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, or essentially if the budget is amended in a
Right.
sense.
Well, I think it's come up during the election years
Yeah, they
where
need it.
Dawn does more work on the election
Well,
stuff.
you know, with the early voting, so.
And then we called out kind of all other township employee, positions. So they do not receive the vacation, holiday, or bereavement.
So go ahead, sorry.
Nope, go right ahead.
I had a few comments here. One was, so the bookkeeper is called out separately and they're not considered, is the reason it's not under part-time?
Yes, because they're not part-time. They're an hourly rate and they don't have a set number of hours they work. So they're not given the life insurance policy. They're kind of like
As
a,
needed.
yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, so they're just paid based on their timesheets, and it's going to be based on whatever the budget is, a
Okay.
little bit different.
Got it.
Yep.
So then the code enforcement officer, fire chief, so it said, and park director, our
Yes.
salary.
Yes, they're
Okay,
paid,
and it says, but there's a time log, so,
yes.
okay, I use my experience again. I'm salary, but,
Mhm.
so I enter my time in BSNA. Do we use BSNA for time sheets now?
Not for salaried employees.
No, so like I would enter, my time, 8 hours a day, whatever. And then if I work, in my case, I think the fire chief's the same, right? So if I worked over, which I try not to do, but you can add in, it's comp time, which he gets comp time in.
He gets comp time for responding to
So, like,
emergencies.
Then you could enter that, and that is essentially the way of tracking. So I thought, it seemed odd to me to have a time log, but then on the same note, I said, well, should or could all the employees, even if their salary, be entering their time in BSNA, and would that place the time log?
Well,
It's
like
better
for
for
the Parks and
tracking
Rec
comp
guys,
time.
it's just kind of difficult for him.
That's true.
Basically,
that's true.
it's just to show that, you know,
What he did on this day?
that they're doing stuff. It gives, I get comments about certain people leaving early and this, I can go, no, I have the documentation, it's always there. And like the code enforcement officer, you know, what does he do during a month? You give him a stipend, well, this is what he does during a month. And it's basically just saying, look, taxpayers,
Okay.
this is what they do on a day-to-day
I
basis.
guess I'm salaried, but I'm expected to be there
Yeah.
this time, so, okay, so maybe that's different, or maybe that's not different, but in this case, we're treating it slightly differently, okay. So that's fine, I didn't think about the,
And I apologize that I just realized I left a sentence between providing their monthly time log. I put in a line about the code enforcer, but that's because we changed it and that shouldn't be right there. That's an odd spot for that, so let me move that.
okay, so yeah, I guess I didn't catch that, so.
But it's, number 3, it's like the code enforcer, put the fire chief in there.
Yeah,
And
and then the liquor
Yeah, I see
inspector
that,
is
yeah.
paid on the stipend. And then kind of down below, we get into the fire department. So obviously, fire department's really different, but there are some similarities. So the full-time firefighters are on the bargaining agreement. The part-time firefighters, we wanted to call out that they will be eligible for the earned sick time that is the new law in Michigan, the ESTA law. And that time is accrued per policy at 1 hour for every 30 hours worked. And they do not receive vacation or bereavement days.
So did we not have, obviously didn't have
No.
part-time or on-call in there before?
None of it, no.
Yeah,
And then called out the on-call. The on-call, and I probably should call this out, they do not receive the ESTA time. So I will make sure that we get that noted.
Oh, yeah.
Now, just to note that when the collective bargaining right now doesn't include ESTA, but when it comes up for negotiations, it will be part of the negotiation conversation.
Are they below the minimum requirement right now?
I think
then?
they're above the
So
minimum
then at that point,
requirement.
Shouldn't matter then, right?
Shouldn't matter, but, you know,
It's legally,
it's something they can discuss.
Okay.
is there legally something has to be put in there documentation wise?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Make it very costly.
Well, it
Mhm.
sounds like they already have more than the minimum.
They
So
do.
it shouldn't increase the cost, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, if they get involved, if they would, if anybody would get involved, it's very costly. They
Mhm.
negotiate.
Gotcha.
So this one we just changed to the employee compensation, we just changed it just to say that the payroll checks will be issued in a timely manner by direct deposit. We didn't call out, it's kind of silly to think like we changed the biweekly because not all of us are paid biweekly. So for example, the compensation that's paid to, let's say, the people that are on the salary, might not be a biweekly pay. I'm not paid biweekly, I'm paid based on my timesheet. So we just called out that it will be paid in a timely manner based, it's based on your individual position. Not a huge thing. We removed number 2, because that's silly, you don't need that. This is saying that you will review, employment compensation will occur during the 6 months, and then it talks about that it will be adjusted, and that's very old language. So when you're doing your annual evaluations, you're gonna be determining whether or not they're meeting the muster of what you need, but then in addition, you will bring it to your budget meetings when it's time for budgets. So it's not really something that we would do middle of the year that often.
Okay.
All right, what other items? Oh, we're getting into the big stuff. All right, let's do it. Okay.
True stretch.
I'm excited, yes. All right, let's see. Oh, really wanna call out number 2 there.
Which you're,
At the top, near the top, where below department
general.
manager shall be responsible, and then right below it where it says in general, it's the township's policy that compensation is based on and changed it to board approval. Because it does not seem that it was based on cost of living, cause that can't be. So,
Okay.
all right. Okay, so this is where we get into the big details. All right, so what we would like to do is, right now, your part-time associates, previously were given vacation days. They were given, 1 week, they were given 1 week, and Mary, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, because I'm looking in the crosstalk document. Hold on 1 second, let me pull this up. Make sure I'm saying the right things here.
Yeah, part-time employees and deputies will receive 1 week paid vacation.
Yes. So we are changing that. We're proposing.
Proposing to change it,
Proposing,
yeah.
sorry, I should change those words. Proposing. And what this does is it combines the PTO with the ESTA time that they're given. So you see hours in there, and those are not in there because the ESTA is, we're going to, there's like an ESTA estimate, let's say. So we have the number of hours they work annually, they should get 1 hour for every 30 hours they work. What we will do is we will roll their vacation time into their ESTA. So they will get, for example, if they've worked between 1 and 3 years of service, I'm sorry, it would be 4 actually, isn't it? It's 4. Chris, did we say 1 and 3? I think we said 1 and 3. Yeah, I'm missing a year, apologize. So 1 and 3 years of service, you would get 2 weeks of PTO plus the ESTA, which would be, 1 hour for every 30 hours that they've worked. We would put that into one combined time bank. And the reason we do that is because it's very enticing for a professional to be able to utilize that time the way that they see fit. And the law doesn't require us to separate the banks. You can have them all as one, as long as you allow the banks to roll over, which these will roll over annually, but they cannot take more time off than you allow. So that's so important to know. So even if there are 4 weeks of vacation time sitting in this bank, an employee could come up to any one of you, come up to Chris and say, hey Chris, I'd like to take 4 weeks off. And he's going to say, that does not work for us. You can't have 4 weeks off. We can give you a week off because this is like our normal thing. We could give you a week and a day. It has to work for what the township needs are, and we have to ensure that when that person is off, there's cross coverage. So the beautiful thing between the 2 new employees that we have here is that they do cross cover each other. That's the bulk of who this applies to, is the 2 of them, and then also our senior center associate. But in addition to that, what we've done, it sounds like a lot of hours. It really isn't, because even if we separated it, they still get the time. What we're doing is we're saying, okay, we value you as an associate. We'd like to combine the 2 together. We're making it easy for us. The tracking is not difficult. And they have the ability to take the time in the way that they see fit, aligning with the needs of the township. It does roll over, but they cannot cash it out when they leave. Previously, vacation time, they could cash it out when they left. So if they were here 5 or more years and they left on, let's say, I'm making this up, like middle of the year, they would have 3 weeks loaded into their bank. We would cash that out to them. So ESTA is very particular in saying whatever your policy is how we work it. So you don't have to cash it out. I would recommend you don't cash it out, because that's just a cost to the township.
If you don't use it, you lose
So,
it.
Correct.
you said, go ahead, you got more to add?
Nope, go for it.
You said a lot, and I'm
Yes.
not an HR person, so this is like, hard.
Yeah.
But, so your opinion, you should combine the 2.
Yes.
Whereas I was gonna, but, and you'd said that if they're not required, they don't lose it on an annual basis, so it would continue to accrue.
Yes.
However, if they left and were not smart enough to say, I wanna take a 3 weeks vacation, they just said I'm quitting, then they wouldn't get paid, but if they said I'm gonna take 3 weeks vacation, and I'm gonna quit,
No, you can deny it,
what
because,
I mean, if you didn't know they were gonna quit, oh, I'm taking whatever.
but you would this is where it comes into play that in a normal world, you have to do what works for the township,
Yep.
and what works for the township is not granting anybody a 3-week vacation, unless there was some extenuating circumstances, you know? If someone was like, hey, my child is getting married in England, and I need to go over there, and I need to prepare things, there may be, maybe more than 2 weeks that's given, but it has to be approved by whoever their leader is. So there's
Checks and balance.
yes, there's a checks and balance, and there's like minimal room for somebody to take advantage of it. There's always a chance that they will,
And
but
if you do, that's the employee you don't want there anyways.
I mean, I obviously will say, as a manager, I'll say it's a pain to, my guys call in sick, and I'm sure it's because it's a nice sunny day out.
yes,
And so I have had those discussions on maybe the bank should be going. So
Yeah.
what you're saying makes sense. I was just concerned that accruing and then getting paid, now all of a sudden there's a big expense, but if you're saying they're not gonna be paid out,
no,
then that's different. I
And-
do
This,
have
this
comments.
benefit doesn't affect the budget.
right,
I do have questions or concern, I feel like the amount of vacation that you're proposing, I feel like is not typical more, so I have comments on that when we get to that point.
yeah, go for it, go for it.
And then previously, it was, looks like it was after 1 year you get a week, 3 years, 2 weeks, and then 5 or more you get 3 weeks. And you're proposing 2 weeks after 1 year service and then 4 weeks after 4 or more. I feel like that's kind of short, but
You're saying short, not a lot
I
of
feel like,
vacation?
no, I feel like
That's a good.
I feel like 2 weeks after 1 year is,
Yeah.
maybe, I guess here's my opinion, and it would be say, 1 week after a year, 2 weeks after 2 years, 3 weeks after 5 years, and then 4 weeks after 10 years. That's probably more standard. To get a month off is usually, you gotta be at a place, at least in my experience, you have to be there longer. So to me, 4 years only, and all of a sudden you're getting 4 weeks off, seems like a lot of vacation time in short. Am I wrong in thinking
It
that?
seems
Well,
like a lot to me too.
This is my 2 cents though, is we're not hiring 18-year-old kids and 20-year-old kids. We're hiring people that have families. And I want to celebrate the fact that I want them to go on vacation. I want them to spend time with the family. So I think it's, the people we're hiring isn't typical. They're more established in their lives and there's things they want to do. And I want to give that for them. We bring them in at a wage that isn't, high. And one of the benefits they get is we're awesome to work with, obviously.
Sure.
And, they have that time off as needed. Because I want to support the fact that I want you to go on vacations with your family. Because if you're happy, then we're productive.
I think it supports the fact that we are a township that's for the citizens, right? We are one big family.
You're not an iron fist.
Yeah.
Right, and the one thing about this time is that if you were, I'm just looking at my own employer, at 1 year aligns with 2 weeks, but that's because we are hiring people for a career, not a job. And that's the one thing about these 2 positions, they truly are a career. I mean, right now, there is another township with one of these positions posted, and the posting is for $68,000 a year with vacation time. So, and I get it, it's a much bigger township.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it can't be,
But-
it's probably not Richmond time.
It's much bigger, but it also comes with a much larger staff. It's not just one person. So I think realizing that we're requesting these associates, even with our senior center, we're requesting our associates to kind of be the jack of all trades. They need to be flexible and say, okay, today I'm doing this and I'm gonna cover this person. And we want people to make this a career.
So, okay.
Good sell.
Thank
no,
you,
that is
thank
a-
you.
That is a good sell. With the, fire department.
Yes.
And now this is not talking about them, but.
No.
What happens is they say their contract says we need these many people, and so when a guy gets vacation, we're paying an equivalent
There's an
guy
overtime cost.
overtime, and
Overtime,
it's like,
yeah.
and it may be necessary because that's the competitive market that they're in, but that's terrible as far as a budget. Here is the expectation that we have the cross-training where we're not having to add staff to
Yeah,
cover
there's no
that?
overtime that's gonna be required
It's
to.
because of the
benefit,
cross
yeah.
training and stuff.
Yes,
With the fire department is they have a daily minimum,
right.
so if somebody's
I
off.
just mean they can't have a
yeah.
part-timer, it has to be a
Correct.
full-timer that now gets paid overtime, which is, they did a good job, you know, negotiating that in my opinion, cause that's significant.
Well, I will
Yeah.
support that though.
Yes,
I'll
Well,
support
I
the
mean,
philosophy
that's-
based on the
that's
skill
the-
set you're getting,
That's
so.
that's how other
Yeah.
communities are, and we have to meet that, but for here, I wanna make sure that that's not. the
Yeah, and
case.
that's just it, so when they take time off, there is no, as I said, this doesn't change the budget.
yeah.
There's no additional, costs incurred because we have to bring people in the backfill.
The important part to also note is that, as you mentioned, Steve, it's about the evaluation of the associates. So when you're doing your annual evaluations, if you're finding that people are taking advantage of time off, we're going to be tracking it. Those are things that you should be doing regardless.
Yep.
And if you're finding that somebody is really not handling their PTO properly and they're not doing what you need as a township associate, then that's the time to move that person up and out and not just sit with the status quo. And I
'Cause
think
you'll
you
see
have
it.
a good board that will hold accountable.
Something else that we struggled with our business for a long time was that benefits package. It was always, because it's a lot of money. This here is not affecting us because it's not affecting the budget, which is great. But what we had realized was that our employee retention was not as good as what it is now. Actually, it's great now, I will say, because we have looked at that, I say evaluation, and I don't treat any of our employers like that. They're like a family to us versus just, they're not a number, but we say is evaluation to an employee. But giving them more vacation time or looking at to work with them makes it, these are men, these are not women. I think there's a difference sometimes between men and women in terms of how most of our guys are like, I don't want to take the vacation time because I just want to work. Women, on the other hand, want to take some vacation time, so there's some differences that you juggle. But back to what we realized was that when we looked at trying to offer some more benefits, such as vacation time, they are now utilizing it. They're now going out with their girlfriends and they're going on a 4-day weekend. They're Saturday and Sunday, they're obviously off on their own. We don't work those days, but Monday and Friday, they're getting paid for and they don't have to stress about it. They can go enjoy some time and they come back with a really recharged battery, typically. The other benefit that comes with that is that when they know that they've got that support, and when their employer appreciates they do, we have people that are now 5, 8, 10. I have a 22-year employee with us. He's different because it was different times back then. But our younger guys though that are in their mid-20s to mid-30s, they're really enjoying it. Now they're not looking for more than 4 weeks, because they don't want to be gone that long. But anywhere from, and we do 2 weeks right off the get-go because the first week is technically, we do paid holidays. So whatever days that, if they fall, you get paid for that. And then their second week is actually their real vacation week that they can take off. So even though they have 2 paid weeks, really only one is. Now if they choose that they don't want to be paid for the holidays, they can choose to do that and then take time off, but then they don't get paid for those holidays. Most of the time they take that pay. But for the other part that they get that, the retention. And then the other benefit to that is we're keeping them here, we're not training somebody. Somebody else new is not coming in that has learned. That's a really big plus, right? I mean, when you bring somebody in that has been here for us, it's been here for 5 years, the amount of work that they've done versus us bringing in somebody new, it's just like, holy smokes, I have to pick up their slack because they're gone. I'm trying to train this person. I'm not giving them the full benefit and satisfaction that they need to learn. They then sometimes become frustrated and just say, hey, you know what? This isn't for me because you haven't been able to spend time with them. And then you're sorry because it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it. That's a little different than here, but it still applies to that, I think, where if we keep people here, everything just flows, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah. It's a no cost.
Well, then
easy
the
way
only,
to-
which we added previously, the only clarification I think needs to be made is, again, it needs to be based on their average
Work
weekly
week.
hours worked from like the previous year.
Just work
That's
week.
actually, we had some language in the last time that said, in their previous anniversary year, whatever.
Okay.
However you wanna, it should be clarified that
Gotcha. Good call.
Okay.
I mean, those are, you guys had good comments, I appreciate that.
All right. I added in the FMLA, which I was a little shocked y'all didn't have. That's a requirement. Yep, so just to clarify though, an FMLA policy is usually about 12 pages long. You do not have a copy of that here. It should be pretty robust. But in the FMLA policy, if someone had a qualifying leave of absence, which there's a whole host of documentation that satisfies being qualified, they would be using 1 week of that PTO for the first part of that leave. So that's one thing to note, but the attorney would have to give the blessing on that policy.
So you say please refer to the FMLA policy, is that
Yes.
specific to the township, like we should have one, or is that there's
That's-
the policy?
That's
We
specific
can
to a
just-
policy that I wrote that you do not have,
Oh,
that needs to go to the attorney for review,
Gotcha.
just to make sure all the i's are dotted and
we
t's
can't
crossed.
just reference a
We don't even,
federal FMLA
you
policy
can,
or something?
you can, but the federal policy allows one of two things. It allows you to tweak it a little bit. You can require your employee to use 2 weeks of PTO for the beginning of the FMLA, or 1 week. And then how you handle the FMLA communication can vary slightly based on your preference. So,
I thought they were required to use all of their PTO before.
no. So usually what you do is that you can use 1 week or 2 weeks. Those are 1 week is usually the minimum that they want to be used. But some employers will allow you to use 2 weeks because it's a benefit to the employee to get paid for that second week. Once the FMLA kicks in, the associate has the opportunity to supplement their pay. So they can say, I'd like to use my PTO, or I'd like not to. That's the FMLA part, that's what covers them, to say, not only is your job secure, but you have a choice on whether or not you want to use your PTO time. And that I want your attorney to review before we bless that section of this. And because what I did was compare it to other township policies, because they're all a little different, just slightly. So just making sure that we have that. The previous policy did call out a personal leave, and that would basically be if they didn't qualify for the FMLA, if they weren't just taking a vacation time, then they would have the opportunity to apply for personal leave. That is strictly granted by the leader of that person. That's unpaid time. That's if we can grant that, we can, and if not, we don't. So that was in the previous document, but that was the only leave called out in the previous document. So.
Okay.
All right, I think we're down to page 16, but a lot of that was crossed off with the PTO. Anything else on that page?
No.
Okay, let's go to 17. Just on this page, just really quickly, just called out that meal periods are provided to employees as indicated above, but they are not a legal requirement. I really loved when people say that, no, it's legally required. It is not. But we did add in nursing mothers because we do have younger associates that are could be any age, but
Yep.
just saying, and want to make sure that they know that one of the things is that we have to provide them reasonable time to pump if needed, and that we provide them a space if they would choose that isn't the bathroom. So wanted to make sure we called that out.
Do we have such a space?
Pause it back
You
there.
got the back room?
As long as we have an office or even an area that we can close off, we're okay.
Yeah, we can,
It'd have to be back there.
Yeah,
Put a
it
blind.
could be, as long as it's an area, we just have to mark it off.
Yeah.
And it's literally in here to cover us, so that way that associate knows they could come forward and request that. Are there mothers who have no problem pumping in the bathroom? Absolutely, but we have to make sure that we offer it.
I think it's
Yeah.
fair.
Bereavement days, I just called out kind of what is defined as immediate family, because we had that in there, but it didn't really define it. It's not something we're probably gonna request a death certificate on, but just making sure that we note.
It's there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, above that, you reference it still says full-time and part-time employees, but we eliminated, I thought, full-time employees.
The only reason why I left that in is because the full-time associates at the fire department get bereavement days, if I recall.
Gotcha.
Yes, but that's technically in their
It's in
bargaining
the CBA.
contract, so
It's
I
in
don't
CBA.
even know that I need it in here. I just left it. So you're right,
Okay,
I could take
that's
that
fine.
out.
No, it doesn't hurt anything. Really, okay.
All right. Let's see. Employee safety. So you'll see some duplication in this area to what I would call like citizen public safety, which is later in this document. But it's basically just calling out that you know, if we have an accident or injury, that we are going to notify the direct manager, or subsequently this would be for employees, and then they're going to notify the manager. That will be reported to the supervisor. We have an injury report that they would need to complete. If appropriate, we may send them to OC Health or to the ER. The township is insured, so we would notify Mary that we've had an injury on the premises, and just want to make sure that we're creating a culture of safety in all of our areas.
So, are you thinking that safety form, you reference appendix,
Mhm.
injury report should, do you have one? And
Yes.
do you think that should be attached to this? So
Yes.
we don't kinda like
Yes.
lose track of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I have two. So there's one that has the parts of the body, so you can kind of identify this is where the injury occurred, and it gives a little statement. And then there's one that can be completed by the manager if they witnessed it or if there was another witness. Just good stuff to
They
have
go
on
together,
hand.
though. They go-
Correct.
yeah.
Yep, they go together. Yep, good stuff to have on hand, just for us as a township. And
Don't cut your finger on the scissor, Mary.
exactly. This workforce authorization, I just deleted the whole thing because this is part of your budgeting process. So if you needed another associate, you're gonna bring it through that venue or bring it to some other venue, so,
I agree.
all right. All right, next section, the only thing I added was that we would, be completing a background check on our associates that we hire. That was it there. And then, as I mentioned, inserting that evaluation form, that's just why I highlighted it, so that we know, that's for me to note to insert the evaluation form in there. Took out this section on seniority because it's called out in the part-time section, doesn't need to be there. All right.
So, this, ethical standards, which I fully support ethical standards. However, it says if such actions occur, they may be grounds for termination or removal from the board, but I was previously understood that you can only be removed from the board by a vote for the public.
Well, this would be the grounds to bring it to that venue, so you guys tell me if you want that in there or if you don't. It's not a big, I just have seen it in other documents, so I thought if you wanted it, you can have it. If not, it's an easy remove. We could just leave the language as is.
I would just leave it as is.
Hey, if you're not doing something wrong, you shouldn't have to worry about it.
Right, okay, so I'll take
Wait,
that
so-
last.
And plus, it's
Are
really
you
not up to
saying
the
keep
board.
that sentence that was added or remove that sentence?
No, I mean, it
Remove
can
it,
stay,
because it's only
if you wanna remove, I'm good either, I'm saying just if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you have nothing to worry about.
I was just saying legally, we shouldn't say something that we can't actually do, so
Okay.
if we keep it, I would say, you know,
Take it out
a
then.
petition will be started to,
Yeah.
remove you from the board or something.
I took it off. All right, so.
Social media, same thing, is
so
that
This,
legal?
this was, this is to support us as a township and to support, in addition, not just you as the board, anyone that works for the township, appointed or not, and including our fire department. So the intent is that we will use social media as a means for educating the public and promoting a positive environment. No incident or concern is to be posted publicly without review from the township supervisor first. And I will give you the context of why I'm adding this.
Is this,
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so let's just say that frequently I see things on Facebook, and one such item would be that there was an accident on a major freeway, and a fire department posted that that accident occurred before anyone at the township level knew that it occurred. Photos were taken, and so that was the moment where I thought to myself, wow, it would be really good to add that into this document so that all of our associates know that we do not post things on social media, because thinking that, what's to say that that scene was set up properly? What's to say that if someone got in an accident because of that just
Sure,
things like
I
that.
don't
Yeah.
disagree with that at all. So, but however, you're saying that if Jim Getzinger's Facebook account, I want to post that accident, you're saying that I can't do that without supervisor?
If you're posting it on behalf of the township, so I can clarify that. If you're posting it as trustee Getzinger, that's different because you're acting on behalf of the township. But if you're posting it like,
Citizen.
hey, family, I saw this weekend, yes, that's your personal, we don't have any authority
Yeah,
over that.
That's, I think, should be clarified,
So
'cause
I
that's how I
think-
read it.
Okay, so I can
I
change
barely-
that
I think
to
this
saying.
speaks more to the employees though.
Yeah,
You know, like,
Well, so, it's the same thing though, if
you're an elected official, I can't tell you what you can and can't post.
Right.
if Katie wants to post, everybody here is an idiot, I don't know. You're saying she can't do that?
No, you take an, well, no,
so
take
that
an
is
employee,
a policy where I work.
take, it-
The policy where I work, I literally sign something that if I have any defamation of the organization I work for, that is grounds for termination.
And-
I am not
and then
allowed to
we need-
talk about work, I'm
yeah.
not allowed to post pictures about work. If it's in a positive nature, yes. If I'm saying, hey, we're hiring, come work for us. The good thing is, I would never do that because I work for a great organization. But they realize that there are people out there, and it is grounds for a lawsuit.
Yep.
So in our world, it's a little different because you are elected and appointed and all of that good stuff. However, our fire department is hired. I mean, these are
yeah,
people.
I guess another example would be, and they would never do this, they're wonderful human beings, but someone put in a permit for something and they post online, can you believe this idiot at this address, they don't even take care of the property, and something like that is not okay.
Just
Yeah,
because
I-
of
You
the
know, and
crazy.
again, they would never do it.
All I'm only bringing it up because I just wanna make sure whatever we put in
Yeah.
here isn't legal and enforceable.
Yes.
I don't think I
I
can,
agree 100%
as elected
with
officials, I
etiquette
can't
and
tell you
all
what
that
you can
stuff.
and can't do. I mean, you don't have to get approval from me, cause you're my peer. So I mean, I think this refers to more of the employees.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can have the attorney double check
Yeah.
this section. I highlighted it just to make sure.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you.
You know, you can take on that battle yourself if you put something out there.
Yes.
Media policy.
Oh, it's in here,
Okay.
so you'll get to that.
Maybe I just forgot.
All right, so education, just took out the fact because this was saying that we won't grant time to employees for studying for exams or class prep, but we would if it's related to work.
Yeah.
So we just took that out. I mean, they're not gonna be doing homework here regardless, so. All right, page 21, anything on page 21?
No.
Page 22.
Nope.
23. Tell me if I'm going too fast. Okay, 24.
Brad, the top it says, you were removed. Employees who participate in work slowdown are subject to discharge.
Yeah,
And that's not legal to say that.
so this, hold on one second.
That's referring to more like a wildcat strike, where
Yeah,
work slow down. And I think that's really old language
Yes.
before
See, we don't
the
even have
CBA came
strikes
into place.
anymore here.
Yeah, I think that's before the CBA came into place. It talked about more of a work slowdown thing, which is wildcat strike.
Okay.
we'll double check it. I mean, I've never seen it.
20 years old.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think this is
I
really
was
language.
only, it was removed, so I was like,
Yeah.
I guess I never really paid much attention to it, but now that it's removed, I wanna know
Yeah.
why were we removing it?
yeah.
Okay, and then, what's this?
Down below the visitor and taxpayer incident, similar
Yeah.
documentation to the employee, but just making sure that we're noting that if any visitor or taxpayer has an incident or accident on any of our premises, that we will be notified and that we'll have an incident report. We didn't have that,
Okay.
so.
Under the next section is who's authorized to talk to the attorney. I agree with everything that's listed. However, the village, they communicate, I believe, through the clerk. And so, when wanted us all to think about what is the best way to contact the attorney. I've thought before, like oftentimes, if I don't email the attorney that much, when I do, I definitely copy the clerk. So I think, if anything, we should have to copy the clerk for records. However, it may be beneficial to even go so far to have the clerk, like, email the clerk. I could draft the email and send it to Mary. Mary, can you send this to the attorney? And then she would maybe copy me when she sent it to prevent duplicate. How do we prevent duplicate communications? What I'm trying to figure out. Is there a way to? Because I might call or email. Even if I copied the clerk, okay, before we get a response, Steve does the same thing. He copies the clerk. We all ask the same question before we could get responses and say, oh, Mary would get a response and maybe distribute to the whole board. But if we're all asking, potentially there's time there, especially if it's a verbal, because somebody calls. Now that's physically time before they hang up. Now they got to talk to Steve because I called. Is there something that should we put language in here regarding that? How to minimize any duplicate efforts?
I don't know how you would put it in, and I don't know that anybody abuses it. I know what you're getting at, but
Well, there
then
has
we're
been in
back
the
to,
past.
well, but
It's not so much abuse, but it was because somebody didn't communicate their question
So that two people
in a
ask-
timely manner,
yeah.
and so then
but it's
somebody
hard,
else
how would
called
you,
it.
how do you
I'm
put
not
in
sure
something
either.
though that,
Well,
We
like I
are-
would say, all communicate. You could say, all communication would go through the clerk. Now, it wouldn't be me saying, Mary, can you draft an email? It would be me going, here's my question, Mary. Could you forward this to the attorney? And then she might say, Steve already asked that question. When I get the response, I'll send it out to the board.
you
That
could,
was
but I
what
think
was
you're
thinking.
asking, I see, but then you're asking Mary to take
Potentially
on
more work.
more work that she has to remember or forgot that I had already asked that. And I would revert back to saying that as a board, we all have the
Yeah,
ability to contact, it's almost it's, I guess, part of our,
Okay.
we all have hired the attorney, we all fired the attorney, we are all elected, there's no,
Yeah,
if you
but
put
I see
something in
what's-
here, there's nothing
I
that you,
see what's-
You know,
what's
say
he's
Steve,
saying
Mary,
now.
did you talk to Christine about this, or what do you know about this? Maybe go from there.
yeah, I think,
I think it's one of those things where you could just, all emails to the attorney get CC'd to you.
I would say at a minimum, that should be the case
I mean, that
for
would,
records.
I'm okay with it, I'm just saying that
Yeah, I
we're
don't
trying
think
to
we've
put
abused
something
it.
into place that really though is not enforceable. I'm not looking to abuse it, I don't think anybody here is, but I'm just saying that you're putting something in, potentially into verbiage that really by law, you can't say one of us five could not all call it this
Yeah,
and
and
make
I'm-
the same it would be
Okay.
dumb.
I'm not trying to say that,
Or
of
maybe
course, but
send it to Chris,
well, I think the thing is, I think there's enough of the communication that
yeah.
we really don't have that situation.
or, so, I guess technically, if there's no dialogue, technically, I could email the attorney and copy the whole board, as long as you don't respond.
discussion.
No
We're
discussion.
not violating it, yeah,
Yeah.
no discussion. So that might be a way to, in the times that I've communicated, I've definitely tried to summarize, as soon as I got a response, I tried to send something to the whole board so they knew that I called.
I think rather than doing that, I think rather than spelling it out, I think just the fact of knowing that we openly here have all said, we're gonna do our best to communicate with one another, which I think has been done for the last 4 months now, very well, rather than putting something into place that says it, that really can't constrict us from doing that. Does that make sense?
Okay.
You
So you
could
don't
just-
even think we should should copy the clerk?
I think a
for
common
record?
courtesy is, I'm always looking to not overburden Mary from one more item, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but if there were 5 emails, that's 5 more things that Mary has to make sure that she gets to then, pass it along to everybody else. I think if you make a phone call or an email to the attorney, you wanna send it out to everybody, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You just know mentally that you're gonna do that, you're gonna
All right.
provide that to
That's
your
fine.
best ability
That's
to confirm it with
And
her.
some of the
Those are
things
my
you're giving me
concern.
more is ZBA stuff, like when you're on ZBA and you want it, that's gonna be more specific to what you're doing. And we're not asking, cause you're on the ZBA doing that work. I think it's more, like me, I do a lot of stuff with code enforcement, I just back and forth with the attorney. Cause no one else is gonna be
I'm
asking
not
other
s-
questions.
Yeah, Mike, I'm thinking of questions that are more board related, right?
Yeah.
But clearly you wouldn't wanna,
Well, and
say, copy the whole board
one of
on
the things
that
that's really, really nice
code
is,
enforcement issues, yeah.
she's sitting right there. At every meeting, they're
Yeah.
there.
That's it.
Well, we
So a
see
lot
how
of it
that
gives
didn't
us that-
necessarily work.
Not
so-
you,
I'm just kidding.
you're over here, but, no,
Yeah.
that is one of the benefits of
Way
it,
to
is we,
slap you down.
I
it's
guess
not as
I-
much doing that, cause the attorney's here.
I still, no offense to Christine, but I still, feel that that's not gonna be a solution, cause obviously we had to hold a special meeting, cause we didn't properly vote on something, right? So it's not perfect, and I still feel like, this is sidetrack, but I feel like we're not Christine can't be expected to have answers on the spot anyway, so I'm not entirely supporting the attorney being here every time, but I do see there's something.
What I would do is I would just send an email to the whole board and nobody respond. Just so that you
Okay.
know that, you're like, who's
Yep.
asking this question. Oh, that's a good question.
Sure.
That's fine,
You know?
okay. So
Yeah, I
no,
think
so
that's
no
a good
changes,
idea.
I'm good
Yeah.
with that, but that was a good conversation, so.
All right, page 25. Page 26. Any changes there? Page 27, just so you know, the items that are marked under the assessor, Kylie, Kylie, I always have to like do that. Kylie updated this based on their contract verbiage, so this aligns with what's in
From
their
hers.
contract,
Yeah.
there's nothing different. So she took it right from that playbook. And that goes into page 28. All right. Page 29. Page 29, what's in blue is just aligning the verbiage that was under,
That's what's in red for us.
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
on my
sorry.
copy. Yours is blue.
yeah, so it just aligns with what was in the other associate's job
So-
description.
I guess I see the word should in there, that
I will change that.
maybe that should be should. Probably missed some of that stuff.
Okay.
Must have got,
Alright.
we got those comments, I feel like, as we went along.
All right, page 30?
Nope.
Okay, page 31,
Blank.
good stuff. That was weird. Page 32, so this is just standard language. I didn't change anything in here because this is just normal sexual
Yeah.
harassment
Verbiage.
language. Yeah,
Same with 33. Just a
yeah, 33, 34. And we get into 35, we had a
So
couple
you
changes.
highlighted that no expense vouchers will be honored, because that was eliminated and then highlighted.
Yeah, that was good.
So, just to be clear, what that's saying is expense vouchers from previous fiscal budget years will be honored.
No, not,
No, because it's being removed.
right. Right, so that means they won't be on it.
No,
No,
This was put in here for one person a long
I
time
know,
ago. It
but
didn't turn into
what it said
mileage for
before
years
tonight
before.
said no
We never had
expense
any
vouchers will be honored
This
from
is
previous
nothing
Yes.
budget years,
It's a
and
motion.
that's being removed, so.
I see
to
what
me,
you're saying now that
they
I'm
will
reading it
be.
again.
Yeah,
It's saying no, but we know what's interesting, it wasn't, it was not, it was in here, but it wasn't honored.
right.
So we're just taking it out because it's not gonna happen.
Because
yeah.
technically
Yeah.
though, if somebody, yeah, shame on them if they don't turn it in timely, that doesn't mean that they legally can't be paid for that. I know we had the problem and I get it, but I'm just saying, so I think removing it is probably appropriate, even if we hope that doesn't happen.
We were paying for snow removal
I know.
7
In
months
like
later.
July or
Yeah.
something.
Right,
No,
How do you ever,
and how do you
I don't even
justify
know.
it?
yeah, how do you
Yeah,
argue it?
Yeah.
I almost
That
would
just
even
should
be
not
willing that
happen.
you need to have your expense turned in with 30 days.
yeah,
Something that says that you have to have it in, and if you don't, that you snooze, you lose. we're not gonna accept the
Yeah,
bill.
that, when we get to that, which is coming up, maybe we.
I know, but I would rather
Talk
see
about that.
an actual time rather than
Yeah.
not anything, so that we
Request-
can't
request
just
for
bring it back.
Reimbursement should be
Not less than 30
submitted,
days.
yeah, something like that. What's
Unless
that?
you brought it here and you explained
2
to the
weeks,
board,
actually.
hey, here's a
We're losing
circumstance with
30
what
days.
happened.
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
the board could
yeah.
decide if they were gonna change their opinion on that, but at least have something.
I agree, okay.
So do you want me to add that in?
I would put
Do you
it
think
in,
it should go
so-
there? This is for authorization.
Yeah,
Is there
I-
like a different section where we would put, reimbursement or anything like that?
Receipts.
If you think this is the, should we add it under?
Would it be
so
under
maybe
invoice
that-
preparation, Mary?
Say that
expe-
again?
See, there's,
Or no, not- no,
there's
not
a
invoice, sorry.
expenditure authorization.
Control.
There's under, on page 41, there's expenditure authorization. It specifically references professional services, travel, membership. It might be, that might be a good spot to put it, in my opinion.
Okay.
Did you guys hear what I said?
No.
Because we're all looking. Well, actually, there's expense reimbursement section, a couple pages later, page 44. Right here, personal expenses. That's what we're referring to, right?
Right,
Mhm.
So I think that's where we should add it, page 44.
okay.
So, I guess I would go a little bit further than say 30, and the reason I say this, cause if you did, for a personal expense, you potentially could charge it on your own credit card, right?
Mhm.
So if you charge it on your own credit card,
You gotta wait
to
for
get
the
reimbursed,
statement.
you at least gotta wait for your statement to come through.
Or, well,
Well,
do
if
you?
you have a
Because you'd
receipt,
have a
it's
receipt
45 days.
still.
It's just to say 45 days.
Well, you'd have a receipt, that's fine too, but you would have you better have a receipt,
Should be paid within.
not just paying here's my
Yeah.
credit statement right here, see this?
Right.
No, so you
I just
should-
meant if you gave yourself just, instead of a 30-day, a 45-day, just a little bit, so that you had that
Mhm.
statement, if there was a question, you could bring that statement in.
The other thing is you might be doing something over a period of time, you're gonna get some receipts, and you're just gonna put them all together in one instead of
one at a time.
throwing them a bunch at a time.
Rather
That's
than being
fine, that's
hard,
fine.
gavel
So-
at 30 days.
Up to 30.
So since we're,
I just said 40,
do you,
Oh, up
we
to
said
40, up to
45. That
so
way you had,
under,
you could get your
So
credit card statement if you needed it.
clarify for me, are these expenses different than the expenses
Well-
that they're getting reimbursed for here?
actually, so now that
It
we're
says
reading
2
this,
weeks.
yeah.
Yeah, so do you want me to update just that to 45 days?
So it already says in here that
It's got 2 weeks.
expense reimbursement form, must be submitted to the clerk's office within 2 weeks of the date of the expense. So,
Well, again,
So we
you know
change
what,
it.
their items have never been used, they've been
now
in
we
here.
forget that.
Yeah,
I
for
didn't catch it. So,
Someone's reasoning that they needed it.
do we,
that
I
we
mean,
might-
I personally am comfortable with 30 days. If we, right now it says 2 weeks, if you wanna
Just
go
put-
45 days, but maybe change it to 30 days or 45 days. and
I'm
just-
good either way, 30
Just change
30
it
or
right here, I
45.
think.
30 to 45 days. There you
Do
go.
45 days.
What, we can't have a
Okay.
range.
within,
I say 45, Monica says
Okay, so
45,
change it
Chris
from
said
within,
45.
Within
within
45.
45 days of the date,
45 days.
Within
of
45
the
days.
date of the expense.
Within,
Yeah.
yep.
Right.
I'm assuming that would exclude the end of our fiscal year.
well, we already eliminated that anyway, so that's correct. 'Cause
Yeah,
if it
No,
hap-
what-
we
if
did
the
it.
expense happens on March 30th,
Mhm.
you're not gonna be able to turn the date in the next day.
No, but wouldn't you at least want a form sent to you saying, I had an expense, so we can account for it, so that way we know it was a cost
Well,
that will
normally
come in?
there's a month, there's a period that you're getting expenses, right?
I don't know, I've
that
never
could-
closed out a year fully with
You,
this.
you get expenses in April that get charged to the previous fiscal year, right? So,
Oh, you do? Okay,
I try not to.
yeah,
but I mean, that happens.
okay. All right, we'll just leave it. We're leaving it.
So we're going,
Okay.
now we're going back.
We go back
No,
to
we'll go
35.
45 days, 45 days.
45.
45 days.
45 days.
Yeah,
45 days, and are
We're
we still
going
going?
back to page
Page
30.
Yes,
Page
sorry,
35.
page 35.
Yes, 35.
Okay. All right.
Where,
Well, we finished line item
eliminated that.
7.1, we should be at A,
Yes.
bill listings, warrant reports,
yeah, which I like that.
Anything-
basic.
Explanation,
else on that one?
Nope, I like the clarification of petty cash.
Is 150 enough too, Mary, for petty cash?
Monica,
Yeah.
Monica?
Yeah. More than enough.
Okay.
Page 36.
There's no changes or anything.
Page 37.
Okay, no changes.
Nope.
Page 38. This one we just changed to what the current practice is, in talking with Mary. Just that she provides the information to them.
Okay.
Shouldn't even say current practice, the practice. This is the way it's been.
yeah.
All right. Page 39.
That, B, the transfer authority, that was worded, bad, hard for me to understand.
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
It's,
Unless when a transfer is made within a department. So if you're
so
transferring
it says
money.
in, but it's
I
supposed
know.
to be a transfer
Yes,
is made
sorry,
within the
yeah,
department, okay.
yes.
So maybe, it's maybe unless,
be-
instead of unless, it could be except, maybe,
Except, sure.
except when a transfer is made within the department. But a from in does make a big difference.
Yes. And then the expenditure controls, just matches what the policy, Chris actually wrote for the fire department.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is the fire department.
Right.
So,
It's a little
big
more in depth.
picture, I was a little confused on, page 41, there's the quotes for general purchases, so I felt like there was some redundancy, or maybe I misunderstood something there. And then, so maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, trying to talk big picture. So if,
Yeah, there's some redundancy.
I have a question on page 40, so you guys have any questions on page 39? So, cause we approved this policy and I agree with it.
Yes.
40?
On page 40, again, I know we approved this, but what's the difference between a quote and a bid? So I almost feel like we should,
A bid's, it's something you do on BidNet. So
well, if it's not how in here,
Gotcha, it's not
it
worded out.
says, from purchases from 5 to 10,000, you must receive at least 3 written bids. 10,000 or more is, it doesn't actually say BidNet, which I thought
Okay.
it should specify, maybe maybe we should add it in there. But, I
Well,
feel
quote,
like
A bid, you're spelling it out more, aren't you? Where a quote, you're just
Well-
getting a number.
So the way it's written though, purchases are
Yeah.
1,000 to 5,000, there's differences, but to me, we could
We should
simply
change the
call them,
verbiage.
they could both say quotes for those two sections. It's a bid, I think like Chris said, is more formal as far as advertising and stuff would be more for a bid.
Like a fire truck.
It's semantics, I get it, but I feel like it gets confusing, at least to people like me. Maybe we could change it and
How do you
top
want to
of
change it?
page 40, where instead of saying written bids, we should call that three written quotes, so it's consistent with the previous threshold,
Gotcha.
except with the other
Yeah.
improved.
So you want bid to be more of a formal process?
So, yeah, purchase
Okay.
greater than
I gotcha.
10,000, have the bid.
So the 5 to 10 is a written quote.
Call that quotes instead of written bid.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So we'll have to change that in the fire department, cause this is their exact policy.
Yes, it is. I copy and pasted it.
So
yeah.
then,
To the fire,
well, it says bids later in that same paragraph, if you
Yep.
could remember to change both.
she's gonna change it to the
We'll
fire
have
too.
to we'll have to change it in the fire department then.
Yeah. Do you need to have that in a separate meeting, or can you approve
Does
that
it
in this
have to?
meeting?
That's their fire department. Well,
Since you're
I don't
here,
need
can
that.
we,
Well, I guess, cause I think that
Can't
we
you
should
just make
also add,
Get rid of the fire department policy, just make it a
Make
township
it-
policy.
township policy,
Okay.
fire in
Yeah.
general,
Encompass everything.
one
Sounds good.
policy.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then you've got one that's 1 to 5 and the other 5 to 10.
yeah, and then there's 10 or more.
I go 1 to 10,
It'd be the same for everybody.
same.
The
Same
whole
for the fire
policy would be the
department,
same.
for the whole township.
Just
You're
top
thinking we
township.
should have
Like a
different
township?
thresholds for us?
Yeah, I really do.
Well, when we get to this part, well, that's kind of the next page, maybe we'll talk
Okay.
about it. So, on,
We'll make
great
one policy.
purchases,
Hang as one policy for everybody.
I think, Monica doesn't think so.
No?
So we should have that discussion.
10,000 for the township we don't get the kind of money that the fire department gets. So
So-
10,000 is like a lot of money for the town. I
It
mean,
still
should be
requires
fire
sealed
department.
bids.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the highest
just because you'd
threshold
have to do a
anyway.
sealed bid with it.
It requires
Yeah.
sealed bids.
Those are just
Fire-
thresholds on how you purchase things.
So the way the fire
Right,
policy is,
right,
if it's
yeah.
between 1 and 5,000, you need 3 quotes. And it requires, must be forwarded to the supervisor for approval, as well as either the township clerk or the treasurer prior to the purchase. And then purchases from 5 to 10, it's still quotes, but it requires board approval, 5 to 10. And then over 10,000 is obviously board approval, but formal bids.
So it gets listed in bids.
So-
Yeah,
So really, it's still requiring two,
Mhm.
two
Right.
Entities.
officials to approve
And
it.
any of us can say, you know what,
Right.
I wanna go to the board. I wanna take it to the board. That's gonna be more of a unique thing of something that, you know, I look at that as it's not really an emergency, but it's urgent and it falls in that threshold, so yeah, we can do it, but most likely those things I would bring back to the board anyways.
So right now,
Remember, that was for a furnace that had to be,
Oh, yeah.
that's what that was used for.
because the way the policy reads on page 41, which is kind of for the general fund, actually that's what it says here, it was saying anything really over $2,500 had
Yeah.
solicitation of bid, which is really pretty low. That's a lot of
It
work
is,
for
yes.
quote for that
That's-
price. Okay,
So is that all highlighted, just get removed
Well, that,
on 41 on the bottom?
I still have a question on 40, we'll make it.
Yeah,
So
I
to
just
me-
highlighted it to show what,
Yeah,
Yeah.
discrepancy, okay.
So to me, if we wanna kind of finish that discussion, we have the general fund purchases,
oh,
but possibly, cause right now we have purchase thresholds.
we could eliminate this whole
That's what
section
we're
just to one
thinking it could
policy.
be,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I can I can highlight that whole section and
Take
take
out all of B, you're saying?
Yep,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
'cause
would
it
agree with
covers
that.
it.
So, well, do we,
Again, we put that in trying to solve
some other issues?
a problem.
Well, can we jump back to page
Yes.
40? So on page 40, it says, over $10,000, a notice soliciting sealed bids must be published in a newspaper at least 5 days prior to the final date of submitting bids. So I think that should be changed to, like, BidNet, I think that we should be requiring the use of BidNet for advertising, including,
Yeah, we have, I mean,
local newspapers. Should we
I
put
was
that
always the
writ-
one posted on BidNet, so I
Yes.
was,
It was,
So,
Chris put it in BidNet and
Yeah,
the
we
Home
did.
Daily.
yeah,
yeah, can we, do you guys
Add.
think we should change this to say that? And then 5 days is pretty short. Should we say more than 5 days? 10 days, 10 business days, or something like that?
do you want it to say and BidNet or and or?
Uh,
And
I think BidNet should be required.
I think we should not use the term or the company name because it's subject to change, cause it used to be municipal and then it
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah,
So I would just put,
Yeah.
soliciting,
The, I should
Exhaust
say
all
the
measures.
township, yeah, maybe the,
How about all current
Solicitations.
municipal.
bid platforms?
well, I think, I would say something like the township
Municipal.
utilized, bidding,
Well, the
I
current,
forget what it's called.
a
and
current,
just put BidNet
That's
down,
online.
if they change it, we'll change the procedure. How's
Yeah,
that?
let's do that. I think that'd be
the
better.
current platform.
I think
Yeah,
we
we'll
should
just put
say,
BidNet, and then if they
So-
change, we'll change the
Wherever the
procedure.
current platform is,
I think that's the only way.
the
Yeah, I
township
would
should
get
be
that one.
utilizing,
Yeah,
I think they need to use BidNet, this is my experience,
Yeah.
that they need to use BidNet.
It's a
They,
lot.
depending on the project, there's not necessarily a value in using the paper. So if it's,
Yeah.
snow removal, you would wanna use the paper, but if it's to put up stadium lights,
It's huge.
probably not, maybe there's a contractor that's gonna look in the voice and go, oh, I'm gonna bid that, but they're probably on
I would
BidNet.
not like, yeah.
Yeah, so I would shy away from saying and, but maybe maybe we are
Throw a
required
may
to
in
use
there.
The fire
BidNet.
Should.
department,
I
yeah.
just
And
put
it
with
should-
BidNet.
What's that?
I just put published. I just
Yeah,
put,
there you go.
must be
Just
published
leave
with
it in.
BidNet.
All right, Lori,
How many days?
Is
Is there
How many
anything that
days
legally
you want me
requires
to
you to
use
post
that?
in the paper, though?
we need more than 5.
Well, just a
Well,
current
there are
platform.
there are
Current
some
platform
instances
setting.
where you are required, like if
Well,
there
this
was
is
grant
written
funding
in
involved, so
Yeah, that's what I mean,
you could maybe use BidNet and any
And any required
requirements,
platforms.
any other
Yeah,
platforms
that's good.
required,
And
or
required.
Yeah.
something like that.
yeah, as I know, like, for fire grants, we had to put it in the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you wanna
All
change
depends on what you're
the
funding.
date, how many days? Cause again, for funding, sometimes it's 30 days, you
Yeah,
know.
but especially for paper, they don't come out.
Right,
I
they
know.
have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the final date for
A
submitting.
minimum of
10 days.
10 days?
10 business days,
I would
can we
put
change, maybe change it to a minimum of,
10 business days?
or as otherwise required or something?
Yeah, 10 business days, that's a couple weeks, yeah.
Business days.
Minimum of 10 business days.
I like it.
Okay.
Done. Okay.
42?
Okay, so, well, yeah, so on, 42,
You just
one
changed-
thing I think, so there's these, exception, so, any board member or department, so before, above C,
Mm-hmm.
the township board may authorize the execution of a contract without competitive sealed bids. I feel like that should, potentially stay in somewhere, like maybe, at the end of the, emergency page 40, cause what it's saying is if it's a sole source, it gives you some examples of,
Well, there
there's
is, I think,
exceptions.
in here there is, if we use,
You have
Is there in
the
that
public
policy?
emergency is in there.
Cooperative
okay.
purchasing
Well,
agreement.
that's on there.
yeah, I know we have that co-op
So,
in there.
so maybe there's, yeah, there is the emergency purchasing, but,
Mhm.
well, actually, I had a question on that too. I don't mean to dwell on these things, but sometimes get caught up in the language. On page 42, do you think we should be keeping that? Cause then you would say,
Seems like
We're
everything was
wording
fixed
this-
previously.
what's that?
I said, seems like everything was fixed previously, so nothing should be broke.
Oh. I
I know under,
run into
under,
this plenty of times where you gotta say, I
Under this one
couldn't
it
get 3
says-
quotes because
if sole source provider,
we're using this and it's the only comes from, this is the Michigan distributor for this product and we wanted to use this product.
Consortium person.
So, and below that emergency section, the one thing I did note is that it's a working document and can be updated or amended. And the reason that I put that below this particular section is because of what you said.
Where do you see that?
Um,
Right
Oh,
under
there.
C.
Yeah, it just because things change so quickly with the environment, like thinking about the fire industry and how they have such big changes with their equipment right now. That would
So,
change how this works potentially.
Well, I was talking about
Sorry.
42, but on 40, that reminds me, I did circle, this references specifically to the fire department. I know this was the fire department policy. Is emergency purchasing really intended for just the fire department, or do we have to change that?
oh yeah, it does say fire chief in it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Mentions the fire department, fire chief.
so
We'll make
who
him do
would
it.
be writing
Okay.
the report if you were doing the purchasing?
Yeah, here.
Yeah. Under emergency purchasing, it actually spells out the
Welfare
fire
of the
department.
fire department or its citizens, because it was a fire department
Well,
policy, so we
yeah.
should probably change that.
So I could just take out the
Health, safety, or welfare
of, yeah,
of the,
of the township,
township.
yep.
or its citizens,
Mhm.
and then a detailed report shall be written by the, or just get rid of that altogether, I guess we should still have a report, yeah. Written by the
Purchaser?
purchaser, I like that, disagree with that. That may not work because,
Or delegated, but
cause
it
we're,
says that
who's the only, who's authorized to make that purchase, the supervisor? Shall have the
Well-
authority to temporarily suspend,
Basically, it's the supervisor and fire chief.
yeah,
But then it would also be
Or delegates.
whoever the delegates are, right?
Yeah.
So,
Supervisor, fire chief, or delegates.
okay.
so I could leave it supervisor
conflicts with forwarded to the supervisor.
Mhm.
This purpose shall also be listed, oh, okay.
Immediately
Uh,
forwarded to.
Detailed report shall be written. If you could just say shall be written and immediately forwarded to the
Yeah.
supervisor and clerk.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. I think I got it. All right.
All right, so just to be clear, on 41B, it talks about the written quotation, it said, and there's some direction on the invitation to bid. Oh, right here, it says at least
We're
once
removing it.
administrative.
Remove it.
Yeah, we're removing that whole section, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Um, But again, did we decide, do you guys think we should also remove the, without competitive, the exceptions? That's listed as 9 through 13 on page 42. You don't think we need any of that? And that's fine, if you guys wanna eliminate it because it confuses it, that's fine, but,
It would still come for board approval, so it would still be a discussion.
okay. All right, so then there's that emergency purchases, is that
Yeah.
redundant as well?
That's
then?
redundant
Yes.
as well.
Okay.
We'll take out C.
I would think, Jim, based upon it's a good question to bring up, but eliminating it cleans it up, makes it more simplified. However, it's a living document. If all of a sudden there was a string of issues or concerns, I think then it would probably be more than easy to bring board level to say, okay, we need to revisit
Yeah.
anywhere in there, but somewhere in this particular area to fix that problem.
I think if you're taking this amount of time to go through this, I agree with you, it has to be used. So if you find that there's a problem, you should be
But these
calling it out
purchases
at
are
your
all
board
coming from the
meetings
board
to say, hey, that's
You
in
know,
our
I realize that
policy,
they do, I
this is
just
what
meant
we should do.
getting rid of it,
Yeah.
it simplifies it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
But back to what Jim was saying, if you're there, if all of a sudden there was a string of issues, okay, hey, you know
Right.
what, next meeting, we're gonna bring this up and we're going to
Yes.
revisit the policy and procedure manual, cause we had 3 instances where I don't think that there was appropriate
We couldn't
actions
get 3
handled.
quotes. or
And
something.
we address it and we remedy it by going back and visiting this and changing that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All
All
right.
right, anything else on 42? All right, what about 43? 44? This one, just calling out that for travel and reimbursement, for general fund and fire department, they must receive pre-approval for out-of-town travel that require an overnight stay.
Agreed.
All right. 45.
Under where it says building access, the second paragraph, you can cross off like calculators.
Yeah. They're very,
Those are expensive.
those are important. Okay.
Securing the
Yeah,
calculators,
and then,
yeah.
Calculators.
and then, the last person to leave the township hall at night shall check to see that the copier, coffee maker, they all go off by
Oh
themselves.
my gosh, this was totally
Oh,
sad.
yeah,
So you
there's,
could take that off, yeah, they
Okay.
you
go
could
off by
probably
themselves.
simplify this even too, but.
Yep, and then personnel working after hours are responsible for turning off the lights and office machines, they all, like I said, they all go off by themselves.
Okay.
This was totally attacking. That's what this whole paragraph was.
So,
Well, if there was an employee that
I
wasn't.
know, I'm just saying this was a total,
That's what happened, right?
this was both parties.
all right, making those changes. We did make some changes to the, property. So just indicating that, all township employees will keep township property in a secure manner, keys, alarm codes, phones, blah, blah, blah. You'll read that, all property, is dispensed by the supervisor and or designee. Once given to the employee, it's their responsibility. If it's misplaced or stolen, we need to be notified immediately. A replacement may be issued. Didn't say shall, cause it's not a given. As it relates to keys or alarm codes, if the supervisor has reason to believe that the key is, or alarm code may have been used unauthorized, new locks, new codes can be implemented.
Ooh.
Pretty standard stuff here. Okay, township documents. So we added some stuff in this section, so, that's next page, sorry. So we added that all township employees will ensure that township documents are kept in a secure manner and that sensitive information will be kept confidential. Documents should never be left in locked or unlocked vehicles or out for the public view. The one thing that we did learn yesterday is we need to add authorized personnel onto our doors. So that's something that we'll work on adding, and it will,
Like every door here?
every door. Yes.
What do you mean adding?
To the actual doors,
Because like is it like there's people
yes.
cause trouble by coming in and wanna videotape somebody
Correct.
standing there and.
This is a common thing nowadays, apparently.
Really?
Yes, because it's all public information, so unless we have it noted that it's authorized personnel,
Okay.
yes.
Does that include the exterior doors, or you're talking about
Isn't
the
here,
interior?
Just the office doors, because if they do not note that,
Stuff like that.
Okay.
It's a bigger
important.
townships, but people just come
Yeah.
right in and,
With their
Yeah.
phones.
yeah, and they just get right in your face and.
Just put unauthorized.
Yeah.
Or personnel only. Okay.
yes. Cybersecurity, so it is the responsibility of all township employees to ensure that their emails and electronic documents are stored in a compliant manner, making sure that passwords for email and other software are never shared and should be kept in a safe and secure place. Employees are cautious with their email and not clicking on something that they are unfamiliar with. And if they receive those emails, we're gonna make sure that they know that they need to call the IT company immediately and the clerk or designee notified immediately. It's important that we make sure that all of our associates are updated on this, just with the cybersecurity issues that are existing in the environment.
That's a tough one easy to write, but tough one to implement.
Well, there's a couple of things that are not in this document from a learning that we had yesterday. So there was a recent local township that they had a cyber attack.
Oh, really?
And they were hacked and held ransom for, I think she said 3 weeks. There is some education that we can implement for all of our employees, including the fire department, because they use the computers pretty frequently. And I have the name in my notes. It's a company that will send out like kind of phishing emails to us to help us, to test us and to educate us on it.
Yeah.
The newest scam that they were talking about, which I've experienced in work, is you'll receive a voicemail to your email. And you'll say, you've received a voicemail, and it's not. It's actually, it's a way in. But one thing we'll be talking about in light of this is making sure our cybersecurity is up to date, making sure we have the multi-factor authentication.
That's what I meant by hard to implement, meaning they're tricky, so it's easy to get tricked. I've been
is.
fortunate to not, but there's a few times like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
did you send me an email about, don't open that,
Right.
that's not for me.
Well, the Google shared or the Outlook shared documents, so it's making sure that when you receive that email, that the extension on the email is accurate. So people get emails from me all the time. Lori wants to update, this was one that the township had that was talking, we would like to update your direct deposit. The person got a phone call. Hi, Susie, this is Mary calling from Armada Township wanting to update your direct deposit information. Just want to verify your bank account number. Thankfully, the person knew that that role would never call them, but we need to do a good job of educating all of our employees that that's not
Well, I
something we
get
do.
emails like that all the time. Can you
Yeah.
send me a form to update my,
Yeah.
and go, yeah, that's not your handwriting, you're not your writing for one thing.
Right, most of the townships are moving to like you have a process, you follow your process. That's not even in here, but we'll get there. So term end, this was added, you guys, you tell me if you'd like it. Just that upon the end of your term or the end of employment, whether voluntary or involuntary,
Love
a
it.
proper handoff is to occur when appropriate. Emails and documents are property of the township and are not to be destroyed or deleted. During this period, no documents are to be copied or shared with self or anyone outside of the standing employees or incumbents.
So I have a question just
Yes.
about that. For example, using my iPad, the township one,
Yes.
it only keeps so many emails, and then it just automatically, I'm not gonna say deletes them, but they're not there. That was me.
It might be archiving them.
So I would,
I don't
but
know.
it's still backed up though through
It
IT
should be.
company.
IT, so they're always
Yeah,
there.
they're always there.
I'm just saying that on the settings, I've tried to
Yes.
go through, cause I've noticed, I'm like, oh,
Where
wait a
is it?
second, I've only got stuff for like 3 weeks,
Yeah,
but I haven't deleted them. I'm just asking though that they're obviously backed up
yeah.
through there, and it's just a matter of what it shows.
Right.
We're gonna schedule a meeting with the IT company to talk about what their backup process
Okay.
is, so we'll verify that, but for sure. But I do think it is backed up, because we backed up some, I'm pretty sure. And then just put in there that, you know, violation of the above could result in litigation, because it could, so. I don't even know if that needs to be called out, but just wanted you to know that I had. All right, next page. Well, we removed the long distance phone calls.
Oh, my goodness.
And, we removed the, computer policy, because it's not here, so we might have a separate computer policy, but we don't need that.
We do, right? Yeah, we do.
Yeah. And then, the emergency repairs fall into the other category, so we're all set there. All right, questions on page 48? Okay, and then what about 49?
On the, so positions on the zoning board of appeals are recommended by the township supervisor, and then planning commission are appointed by the township supervisor. So recently, the attorney clarified that anybody on the township board could recommend somebody for the ZBA. So, I just thought that was worth bringing up. Are you saying that you wanna change it so only the supervisor can
Nope,
make that?
that's why it uses were recommended, basically it's the process, so that the supervisor recommends it, bring it to the board, you guys say, no, we want this guy, then it's a conversation. It basically just starts the process of who's gonna be. The other one is actually,
That's
the
true.
planning commission is actually appointed by, for approval.
I just think then that should, if we're looking to reiterate the, law, I guess, I would say it should say, are recommended by a township board member and appointed by the board of trustees. That's how I would word it, even if, you would like the practice to be the supervisor makes the recommendation. I think if legally it's anybody, it should say that.
Mhm.
We might-
And that's just basically to put something in there how the process starts. And I say I want, you know,
So,
John to do it, and everyone says no, and then you say, well, I want Bob to do it, and everyone says yeah.
so,
But even, even technically, even the planning commission, I appoint it, but it still has to be,
oh yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah.
Oh, so it says appointed there,
Oh,
so that
yeah,
might be
but in
incorrect
that
too
appoint-
then.
Yeah.
I appoint them, but you have to approve it.
This board still has to approve it.
Yes.
So I think that it should say recommended by, for ZBA, recommended by a township board member and approved by the board of trustees, and then the next one should be planning are recommended by the township supervisor and approved, or appointed, maybe you wanna call it appointed, but the language is inconsistent there.
Do you want me to double check with her? Cause I
Yeah.
wrote what she said
Oh,
when
she
she
did
was
say,
here.
right there?
I'm
Oh.
pretty sure it was in the minutes, but I can double check.
Bob was here when he provided that.
MTA
That was
has a-
him, that's him.
Yeah,
So
MTA
do
has
you
a
want,
thing.
do you want me to just double check it?
Double check that,
Okay.
yeah, cause I don't think that's, I think that should be worded a little
I
bit.
have the MTA
Okay.
book too, it actually spells out.
Yeah, I thought that's where but I'll double check it for sure. It's in green, highlighted. I just didn't, the dates, that's just for me, because we have to decide when this is approved. And then obviously, just the acknowledgement. So
Yeah.
people will acknowledge this, we'll make sure that people get it. If there are any changes, then they will be resent out. And then the only change that will happen on the organizational chart is making sure that we're adding in the bookkeeper and making sure we're including the right positions. So making sure that that's all corrected.
Oh, look at that, Jim, you and I are left out.
You're out.
We're part of
You're just
township
two.
board.
Would you like some? I'll give
Oh,
you some. What do you want?
Put you over here.
I'm just saying there's no other sublines below us, so we're just
The one
You
thing
get
I would,
nothing.
Where are you looking at? What are you talking
Yeah.
on the organization.
We're under township board, huh?
No,
No,
You left out Nicole.
you're over.
I will
Oh, yeah,
happily
we're right
share
there.
and
Yeah.
some things.
Two trustees,
One thing I would really like to do is, if you go back on page 15, and it's because, you know, we have employees in place now, under A, the time off request, if we'd agreed to that language, I would like to see if we could possibly make that active too.
Yes.
just because we have these employees now and for a few months now.
And
So
we
just
really,
A,
we really need to make it active in
By
line
law.
with the
Yeah.
ESTA
Well,
laws,
at least
yeah.
that part of it.
yeah,
Right.
just A.
Do you think
Everything
it's
under
gonna
A.
take-
Of
and
A,
your
'cause
concern's gonna take us that long to bring this back
A
to
time
actually
off request?
adopt it that you
Yeah.
want
The,
to
the
adopt.
verbiage is, we
Yeah,
agreed,
under A.
we changed the verbiage where we needed it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so making sure that, that they, this would be the acknowledgement that they do have a combined time off bank that is for their vacation and their ESTA time, and we will have a tracking mechanism, because they have to request the time off, so the approval of just that,
It makes us,
that section, so
it
they
makes us
know that.
compliant with the law and the fact that
So
they're
we
here and,
Right,
So we can say to them, hey,
we
you
just
can
need
have
to
some
adopt-
time off.
alright, so we just need to adopt A time off request.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make a motion to adopt A time off request as presented, effective 4/22/25.
Support.
Nickel,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Getzinger,
Yes.
Swack, yes, Cruffy?
yes.
And I should have asked this before, but the only change we had in there was the clarification of it's based on their,
Yep.
which really they haven't accrued any vacation yet anyway, so it shouldn't matter yet. but-
One of the things that's in here that I realized I didn't say out loud, and it's in here, is that they will be given this time in 2 increments during that first year. So it's not like this week we're going to be front-loading their bank
Right.
with 2 weeks of vacation time and ESTA. They're gonna be given it in 2 increments. So one
Will
will
they-
come in April, and one will come in November.
So, I may have misunderstood, so they don't have 1 year of service in yet, so you're saying the intention is they're going to receive vacation time now, even though they're not here for a year?
Yes,
So,
Well, it's a PTO.
Yes.
it should be clear, am I the only one that misunderstood that?
oh,
That-
you're thinking it should be year
They're on year
0 to
zero
year,
right now.
yes, yes. So it is the intent that in that first year, they would be given vacation time. I can tell
Which
you
is-
that that's
it's
gonna be a
PTO
really
time.
big dissatisfier if
Yeah.
there's, you have to work for a full year with no time off.
And again, it's,
Wow.
it's,
Yeah.
I guess
it's
that's all I've
PTO,
ever
it's not,
had.
No, but SD.
I've worked for bad employees, I guess.
You
'cause
have,
I've never had time off
Really?
in my first year. yeah.
okay, well,
I don't think that you're wrong with what
It
you're
took
saying.
Yeah.
I would tell you that I think that, again, that from all my years of being in business and what I learned from where I was at before to where I'm at now, you have had to learn to adapt and change things to, I say be a part of the new generation. There's things that I still don't like, that I disagree, that I butt heads with, but you know what? I don't wanna
Well-
retrain somebody.
Okay.
Well,
And
I
if they're
guess
a good
Then that should be
employee,
maybe clarified, it might be
Yeah.
some sort of a clarification on what first year of service means.
so I can just put years of service 0 to 3. So
That's
that
right.
way you
I would
know
put
it's 0 to 3 from the
Yeah.
beginning, you'll be given this time.
if somebody started now and had a wedding in July, they could utilize it.
Right,
And coming here, they're knowing that they have that opportunity to have it effective immediately. That to me is more of a perk of like, you know what, I like that. I don't have to be there a year. If they, you know what, that's the gamble, that if you do that and all of a sudden they take that and they quit in August, okay, we didn't get a year out of them, but you know what, we may have learned something about when we interview the next person that comes in there. Or they were just that type of an employee that did what they did. I
and
mean,
again, the nice thing is we're not backfilling, so it's, there's, you know, that cost of overtime costs.
and it really does come down to the accountability piece, you know, I can't stress that enough. When you have, whether it's just the few associates that we have, or even us that are appointed, there is an expectation that you're holding us accountable to the work that we're doing. And if you're not doing that, that will be when you see these things are abused. That accountability piece, and I can't stress it enough, because sometimes people think that they don't wanna hold people accountable because it's more punitive in nature, but when you don't hold people accountable, the ones that are naturally accountable see it like
Yep.
as punitive to them, like, hey, I'm doing my job and you're not holding this person accountable, so. Luckily, we'll hopefully have a lot of self-accountability,
So do you think this is something we can have updated for the May meeting?
yes,
Okay,
yep,
so we'll bring it to the May meeting for updates and kinda go over it and see where we're at with that? Okay, so we're done with that and for that?
bring it to the regular
So-
May meeting.
Yeah.
How will that be viewed? Will you, just highlight changes we're making today and accept, the other changes that are on
Yes.
here now?
Yes.
So we'll just see the changes from today.
Yeah, I put everything in green that we changed today.
Okay.
So I'll go through, I'll accept everything else. I'll make sure that the table of contents is updated, make sure that the organizational chart is updated, and then also to run the few things by the attorney that we need to run by, make sure we're not missing anything. And then, can I say that one of the things that would be really great with this policy and procedure is that eventually, I couldn't do it with this time around, but I mean, I'm gonna be honest, really what I'd like to do is throw the whole thing out and written the whole thing over again. But I knew that that would have been a much longer meeting. What I'd like to see is that we go to individualized policies. So it's not in a per se manual. Some of this stuff will be, but an actual policy book that has individual numbered policies that you can flip to and say, okay, this is the PTO policy, this is this policy, but not in a document that's 51 pages, if that makes sense. Because I feel like it's very hard as an employee. It's much easier when it's, you only want to reference one document and I have to pull out this whole thing. I can just pull out that one policy and say, here's our policy. That's what we see from the other townships. When you call, a lot of times they have a one pager. For some reason, we have a whole packet.
Book.
I
Yeah.
think that's a good idea. I think that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Because it's just, nobody's gonna sit there and go.
Right, so I think if, as you move forward in the years, we'll just slowly pull things out, make it individualized, and
Here's the
skinny this down.
cybersecurity.
Yes,
Here's, you know, like you said, PTO, here's your holiday pay.
right,
Whatever it is that I'm looking for right now, here it is.
It was a petty book.
Yeah.
Well,
So is it-
you're
That's what
right,
it
but I
was.
know there was some things that we added that I've even wanted, cause certain people were parking in the only 2 spaces we had out front, we felt like we had to add something in there, so I was part of that too, I didn't think it was
Well,
petty
you
in
know
that
what,
sense, but
No.
I know what you're saying.
That's, yeah, I don't
It
mean it
was-
like that, I say that the majority, you can literally go line item by line item almost outside of the normal business stuff and really see where
Yeah.
it was.
It was abused.
Yeah,
I think that's,
be-
This was
any
put in
industry,
place
it's that,
because it
there's
was
always a
abused.
policy that's named
there's a
after an
rule for a reason,
individual.
cause someone's name is behind it somewhere, it's true.
It's like
Yes.
warnings on toothpaste or whatever.
Yeah,
Somebody
exactly.
did something.
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
So.
any comments from board members? Lori, thank you very, very much.
Lori, thank you.
Thank you.
Any motion to adjourn?
I'll second,
Okay, go ahead.
I'll second that, 9:22, Mary.
It's the longest meeting we've
Yeah.
had.
Way to go, Chris.
All
You
in
totally,
favor?
Say Lori, man. I put
all
her
in favor?
charge.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.